Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight is our last show of 2022. Yes, it is. And because next Sunday is Christmas. So obviously we won't have a show. So I wanted to go out with a bang for 2022. And I swear to God, this is one of the best guests to go. He's a really soupy topic tonight. Is Dr. Simeon Hein. First time we've had him on the show. And I've been loving his book, Dark Matter Monsters, Cryptids, Ball Lightning, and the Science of Secret Life Forms. This is the reason I love this book so much, and I can't wait to talk to our guest tonight, is when I first started this show 7 years ago, I said the reason I named it Paranormal Soup is that I believe all these things are connected by some universal theory that we haven't come up with. Some kind of scientific theory that could explain all of this, all connected in some way. And I really feel this book really comes close to touching upon something that could be that one day. Really gets into the quantum realm, into we get into coherent matter and dark matter and all that good old sciencey googly godly stuff. People are gonna be like, oh, this is way over mad. He really does in the book make it understandable to some degree. And if anybody like me has been interested in the idea that of this phenomenon, how they all relate together, really going to get into that topic tonight. And of course, we got a lot of weird to get to because everything is always getting weird in this strange world. I'm sure 2023 is not going to be any different, but there's a lot of weird in the World Wide Web of weird tonight we'll get into. And we'll open up the phone lines later in the show for you to call in and join the discussion. Got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling on into it. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest will be joining us after the World Wide Web of Weird, Dr. Simeon Hein, author of Dark Matter, Monsters, Cryptids, Ball Lightning, and the Science of Secret Life Forms. I wish I had a hard copy of this book, and I forgot to put a copy in here to show you. I'm sure our author tonight will have a copy on hand to show you the cover. But, man, I really cannot wait to talk to our guest. Hopefully no technical difficulties like last week. Oh, my God. And we are live on Paranormal Soup, on the Talkstream Live Paranormal Radio app. I apologize last week to anybody tuned in. I forgot a bill. Yes, and if you forget and don't pay the night of the show, guess what? You don't get to go live. Yeah, that's my bad. That was totally my bad. And we had issues with the guest streamer. Hopefully, knock on wood. Last show 2022, no technical difficulties, because this is going to be a great guest. Joining me as always, hopefully no technical difficulties on her side, is Jamie D herself. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing well, and just as you were saying that, my internet started to spin, so keeping fingers crossed.
I can see the video quality blurred down a little bit, like your normal. Like as soon as I pulled you up, I'm like, oh no, hang in there, Jamie. Hopefully we can keep you.
If I get booted 3 times, I'm out.
Yeah, I gotcha. Join me from.
It's doing it.
Yeah, I know. Just hang in there as long as you can, Jamie. Join me from St. Augustine, Florida himself, much warmer than it is here, is Rob Autry. How you doing tonight, Rob?
Pretty good, but I don't know if it's that much warmer. It's pretty daggum cold here tonight.
Oh, what's cold to you?
It's like 40-something tonight.
Really? In Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's still not that cold.
Well, there's a reason I live in Florida, so. And it ain't for 40 degrees.
That is really cold for Florida. It's almost like I'm there. I swear they'd always have record degree temperature drops in Florida when I show up.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm made of dark matter. I don't know.
That cold. I'm distracted.
Well, we got a lot to get to tonight, and we'll probably be on a 2-week break, just so anybody doesn't catch the end of the show. I'll announce this now. We might be back the first day of the new year. I don't know yet. I have some work things I don't know. I got to see. Otherwise, it'll be a 2-week break, and we'll be back with guests we are scheduled for. So just so anybody doesn't get the end of the show, I want to make sure I get that out there now that we definitely aren't back for Christmas and maybe back for the New Year's Day. We'll see. All right, we got a little weird to get to, so let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird.
It's 46 here, by the way.
Oh, 46.
Feels like 10 below.
Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, I thought I'd start with something I've covered. I covered it during Trump's administration. I know that. When they basically kicked the ball down the road to the next administration on the JFK files, which, was pretty disappointing. Trump's supposed to be the anti-establishment man, but he sure as hell played along on that one. And Biden's not done much. He released more than any other president, as the article says, but withholds thousands, like the most important. And they are in the crappiest condition if you've seen these files. The National Archives have had, 30 years to work on this? Oh my God. And if you see these files, some of them are barely able to read them. It's not because they're blacked out. For those listening on the Paranormal Soup radio network, like I said, I'm glad you're listening because last week we weren't on there. We are a webcast. We do stream out live to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And you can watch if you want. We do have a good, really heartbreaking, kind of warming video tonight I want to show. We'll get to that. But first off, let's talk about this. I'm going to be pissed about this. I'm not going to read the whole article because this comes from fake news. No, I don't know. President Joe Biden's administration released more than 13,000 records of President John F. Kennedy's assassination Thursday, but it fell short of the fully complying with the spirit of the 30-year-old law demanding transparency by now. Yeah. With Thursday's action, about 98% of all documents, we got 98%, related to the 1963 killing have now been released, and just 3% of the records remain redacted in whole or in part, according to the National Archives, which controls the John F. Kennedy assassinations. And I got a big problem with this. I'm not going to get into the rest of this article. I mean, everybody's been talking about that's interested in this. It's 43,000 records remain redacted. A lot of the researchers say it's some of the most important stuff that would answer actual questions that we have, like what was Oswald's connection to the CIA? I mean, my biggest thing, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too deep, because we got a very short time, is that Oswald defected to Russia, got a visa super quick, and this is in the Warren Commission's investigation, not conspiracy, it's history. He got a visa and an embassy really quick. Stayed at 4 different 5-star hotels while he was there with $700 he left with. Somehow he had all this money to get there. Gets into Russia. The same time this is happening, Russia actually, not long later, shoots down one of our secret bombers that basically killed peace talks with Khrushchev's. Yeah, right? I don't know. I'm not a historian, but I've always been interested in this. After all that happens, he was in the military. He suddenly just comes right back to America. No problem at all. They were watching him. You know, the FBI was watching him. You know, the CIA was watching him. And there's proof of that. And he was down in Mexico. Some of the interesting stuff that did come out that was not redacted is some of the stuff in Mexico, but a lot of it's redacted. And what his dealings were with the Cubans. And you know, some people say maybe it was Russia the whole time and we just want to cover it up, stop nuclear war or whatever. I don't know. But I know he did not act alone, is my opinion. I think there's a lot of evidence there, and we could have a lot more evidence if, you know, they would get this together. And the biggest deal I have is National Archives had 30 years to put this together. And if you see some of these records, they're photocopies and they're crap. They're crap. You can do better. But they didn't try. They didn't even try to do any organized fashion with us or do better. Here we go. And we can't release these because, you know, national security interests, something 60, 70 years old. I mean, what is interest now? All these people are dead. I think what it is if it is proven that our FBI, our CIA had bad actors in it who were collaborating with or just letting somebody assassinate a president. Maybe they didn't help him, but they just didn't stop him. But I think when you look at the story of Howard Hunt, deathbed confessions, and along those lines, that we were involved, big time. There were factors that saw JFK as a traitor to this country, especially after the Cuban Missile Crisis and our dealings with Turkey and taking our missile installations out of there and a secret deal he made to basically stop us from blowing each other up, that he was a traitor. I don't know. At the same time,
I definitely don't think it was one person.
No, I you know, the hobo was pictures, and there's Howard Hunt in a picture. You know, everybody said that's Howard Hunt. He said it was himself on his deathbed confession. So, what's that guy?
Nowadays, you know?
Watergate. You remember Howard Hunt? Yeah.
Like George Carlin said, this country was bought and sold years ago. There's
yes,
a big
it
old,
was.
and you and me, we ain't in it.
Yeah. Good old late George Carlin. I miss him. Okay, let's move on. I don't want to run out of time. Now, this story, this would be my son Liam's favorite teacher. You know how much I fight with my 6-year-old over, you're not watching that, you're not watching that, you're not watching that. Like, nothing scares this kid hardly ever. I mean, he has gotten scared. There's stuff I'm like, see, I told you shouldn't watch that. Like, you know, but generally he doesn't get scared. He's going to be a horror fan. And I guess people are horror fans. I'm more of a suspense thriller fan. I don't like gore. You know, I like the Hitchcock, less is more, you know, like let my imagination torture me more. I don't like pure out gore horror movies. You know, Liam would totally be into it if I'd let him, but I won't. Well, this teacher would have been his favorite teacher. A Dutch man lost his job as a substitute. And this is from Tim Bindle from Coast to Coast. Teacher at an elementary school after it was discovered that he had been forcing students to watch horror films, including The Exorcist. This reminds me of I'll tell the story in a second as quickly as I can. The strange case reportedly came to light last week when administrators and police were contacted by parents who were concerned about what their kids said were creepy movies being shown in class. A subsequent investigation found that a substitute teacher had been terrifying the tots, age 7 to 9, with unnerving films that he superstitiously screened for them while they were eating their lunch. According to the frightening fare chosen by the teacher were the classic horror films The Exorcist, as well as sci-fi hit District 9. Well, that was just torture because it's a stupid movie, bad movie. As one might... Sorry, I'll probably piss some people off with that one. As one might imagine, parents were not too thrilled with the man's lessons plans, as one angry father explained that some of the kids would run to the corridor to hide, while others didn't want to go back to class, and many reported experiencing nightmares from having seen the movies. Even worse, children who complained about being scared were said to be mercilessly mocked by the substitute. You crying? Are you crying? Are you scared? You can imagine this jerk. Oh my God! What might call an undeniable case of consciousness of guilt. The teacher had instructed the children not to tell anyone, you're a groomer, dude, about seeing the films at school, and amazingly had devised a setup wherein the movie would switch to a more kid-friendly movie, such as The Pink Panther. That's torture too, buddy.
What is wrong with this man?
Should an adult enter the room, he knew very well what he was doing. The head of the school declared to the parents in a letter. That poor head of the school and the school board, how this guy got hired. Oh my God. Oh my God. What, why?
And while they're eating lunch, I mean, this is one sick person.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I know I got to watch saying it on YouTube. The word groomer, people don't understand. That people can groom kids for certain things. But that is a condition of,
he's
conditioning these kids to be like, I guess.
Whatever reason.
terrified. Like, I mean, he's like a
He's
secret,
getting a
like,
sick
his sick
pleasure off
kick out
like
of their
watching these
fear.
kids get scared. Yeah, like
Yeah.
this
Guy is
got
mentally
problems,
wrong. Oh my God. See,
and
this
this is going
reminded
to
me of a story
escalate.
though. When I was friends with this girl, briefly dated her, and my best friend dated her for a while, and she was messed up. She had a messed up life. Her parents were messed up. This is how messed up they were. When she was like 6 or 7, they made her watch The Exorcist and told her if she was a bad girl, the devil would possess her, and that's what would happen to her. You know what happened? You know what you do when you do that to your kid? She ended up being a heroin addict later, totally effed up. I don't know where she is now. Hopefully she got herself clean and is living a better life and got over it. I don't know. I almost don't want to know.
Or she could be possessed by the devil.
But you see what happened? It's horrible. Okay, we got to move on. This is more heartwarming story. I guess it's sad and it's not. So a widow claims footage shows her late husband comforting their baby. The video, which was recorded on a baby monitor, shows an anonymous light next to the infant's head. Whitney Allen, a mother of 2 whose husband died back in April, following complications from an allergic reaction to a bee sting, believes that the footage captured from her 3-month-old son Leo's baby monitor shows her late partner's ghost gently soothing the infant back to sleep. The video, which was attracted over 3 million views on TikTok, get rid of your TikTok, does indeed show some sort of unexplained light moving in such a way so as to appear like a hand stroking the child's head. I saw his spirit soothe our baby, the one he never met. Oh my God. The veil is thin. The clip has since attracted tens of thousands of comments from the social media users. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen, one user wrote. Thank you for this. Whether or not the footage really does show evidence of ghostly visitors, however, remains a topic of debate. Now, I am generally pretty critical of orbs and CCTV camera, but there is something weird about this one. And I am with this mother on this one. And it's not because I want to hope it's the husband. I will admit that is a bias. But I've watched a lot of CCTV footage or baby monitor footage, and there's something weird and different about this. Go ahead and play it. And it's going to be hard to see. You can find this online. You can find this Unexplained Mysteries has this article, and you can get your own view of it on YouTube, and I highly recommend look at it again. I do a zoom in of it here in a second. It's going to be not do justice on here, but there's some weird light sparkling going on inside of this orb that I don't understand. And you almost feel, I swear to God, you can almost see it moving the hair. It's grainy. It's hard to tell, but I almost swear you can see it moving the hair. Now, here's another shot where the baby turned over, and it's doing it again on the back of its head. And it's like a pet emotion. And the first shot, when the baby opens its eyes, it's like it reacts to it. Not scared.
Yeah, I've watched tons of this because of the security, cameras and testing cameras and everything. At first,
Here's
I thought I had an
Look at the way,
explanation.
if you can see the light sparkle in it in a weird way. This first clip. Again, go to Unexplained Mysteries, find the article and the link to the video there, or type the, babies.
And there's no type of mobile above the baby's head.
It doesn't appear to be,
That
but
could be
that's hard to say.
reflecting off of it.
But the way I don't know. Looks like I've looked at this video a bunch of times. It looks like a miniature little galaxy inside the orb. Not this one, the first shot. But you see how it almost looks like the hair moves? I know it's grainy, it's hard to tell. Like he is being petted on the head.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was incredible. I'm with the mother. I feel like there's something there. And you know what I always tell people about this stuff? You never can say anything's 100% proof of anything. But what does it mean to you? What does your gut, your inner voice tell you it is? Go with that. Because I'm telling you, that's where you'll find the truth.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Okay, we'll move on. If we run out of time. Oh, yeah, we're running out of time. Quick, shoot. Next one is, I'm not going to read all this. Aliens may only be interested in Earth's technology, study claims. Question whether we're alone in the universe remains one of the biggest philosophical conundrums of our time. Well, it seems almost inconceivable that our civilization is alone in the cosmos. The fact still remains that we have yet to see any evidence of the contrary, and they get into the Fermi paradox. Let me skip ahead, though. Now, in a new paper, astrophysicist Armi Wandel from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem has put forward another possibility. because it was, if you're familiar with the Fermi, I guess I should have read it if you're not familiar with the Fermi paradox. Why we have no evidence. The possibility mathematically that there's life out there is very, very high, but we have no evidence of them being here. Well, some people's opinion. But this new study by this professor offers another possibility. What if the life in the universe is so common that intelligent extraterrestrials are only interested in communicating with civilization in possession of advanced technology? Again, as anybody who is a Star Trek fan like me would know, we have the Star Trek Federation has a prime directive. They're only going to interact with civilizations that have reached warp drive technology. And they're not going to interfere with anybody below that level. And there could be some prime directive out there between. But my problem with that possibility too is that there's going to be aliens out there that are not going to be so nice and don't care about any prime directive and are looting and slaughtering probably primitive planets. I just nature is, creates evil sometimes, or just monsters out there. I don't know. We're just lucky we're at the backwaters of the galaxy and nobody's really messing with us. At least that's what they think. I don't have time to get in this whole article. This is from Live Science. You can read up the whole thing. It's very long. And it gets into the whole prime directive and the warp drive. But I thought it was interesting. And speaking of technology, everybody's talking about this. And it's going to be a big topic tonight in the show when you get into talk about cold fusion and coherent matter and dark matter and all these things. Everybody at my work asks me, have you seen this? Because they all know I'm into this stuff. Breakthrough in nuclear fusion energy announced. Physicists have pursued the technology for decades that has promised a potential source of near-limitless clean energy. On Thursday, researchers confirmed they have overcome major barrier producing more energy from fusion experiments than it was put in. But experts say there's still some way to go before the fusion powers homes. Experiment took place in the National Ignition Facility at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories in California. The LLNL director, Dr. Kim Bedell, said that this is a historic achievement. Over the past 6 years, 1,000 people have contributed to this endeavor, and it took real vision to get us here. Nuclear fusion is described as the holy grail of energy production. It's the process that powers the sun and other stars. Like I said, this book by Dr. Simeon Hein really gets into this topic a lot. The one thing I want people to understand when people are like at my work are like, that means we're going to have
that's our lab here.
Yeah, I know.
And the people clean room floors there.
I remember, the whole 1989 Martin Fleshman and what was his name? Stanley Pons, 1989. And this, I know he talks about this in his book. Came out with their cold fusion experiments, and then they didn't want to come out about it, but the university made them because they wanted to patent it. And all things went downhill from there when other people couldn't replicate it. People did replicate it later on, but they weren't given time to, and the people who tried to replicate it didn't do it right, and these guys lost their reputations and a lot, and basically killed the idea of cold fusion. So I don't know. They're going to come out this early. If they haven't learned from the mistakes of the past, means they got something maybe. But this is what I said. Okay, just settle down, people, because if you read the fine print of it, is okay. So the input power is from these lasers is 2.05 megajoules. The output is like 3.0 megajoules. So great, you got more output than input. That's right. Not necessarily. So to power these lasers, you need 300 megajoules from the grid to fire them up to get 3 megajoules out of it. We're not there yet. What it proved is that it's possible, beyond our laser, the things that are like limiting us in our laser technology, is that if we get past that point and we don't have to put so much power into the lasers, that we can actually make something that would produce more power output. It's very interesting. It's fascinating, but we got a long ways to go. Okay, we got to move on. I'm running out of time. All right, what's next? So on to the technology, and aliens are interested in this. We are advancing fast in technology, though, at a scary pace, as usual. This one scares the hell out of me, because we were talking about this, I think, last week, as the Neuralink, or at some point we've talked about this quite a bit on this show. Yeah, it's probably last week, or any week with this show. Brain-computer interfaces could create AI-controlled super soldiers. Oh, what such science fiction fun there. Imagine that a soldier has a tiny computer device injected into their bloodstream that can be guided with a magnet to specific regions of their brain. With training, the soldier could then control weapon systems thousands of miles away by using their thoughts alone. Embedding a similar type of computer in a soldier's brain could suppress their fear and anxiety. Oh, great. Just great. Allowing them to carry out combat missions more effectively, killing people without fear or remorse or guilt or anything. They just super soldiers. Yes, you know China is on top of this. They've been talking about, admittedly, creating super soldiers. You know our military has been experimenting on this. Elon Musk's Neuralink has its own version in our U.S. military. I am sure of it. These kind of articles that come out like this, they're just verify that this stuff is going on, and it is scary.
They
I
put
am
these
not a big fan of
articles out
transhumanism.
after they've had the technology at least
Yes.
5-10 years.
And moving on, because we've got to move on. I don't have time to read all these articles, and I don't have time to read this one. Jamie, I know you shared this on your timeline. Could birthing pods solve Elon Musk's fears of a population collapse? Scientists unveil creepy concept video of human farms with hundreds of transparent artificial wombs and replicate a mother's uterus. Go to Daily Mail. Under Science, you'll find this article. Watch the whole 20-minute video they made. Like, they make it look like a whole advertising pitch, like for a facility that can farm out like 30,000 humans a year. And population decrease is a problem in the world. You know, everybody talks about that they want to decrease the population. These TED Talks and these people, they get together at the world forums and talk about decreasing the population by 50%. That's a lot of people to get rid of. How are you going to do that? I'm not going to get into that. Done enough time. But you know who has a real bad population crisis? They're going to look at that and go, we will build that, is China. China is about to face a massive, they have the most people, right? 1.4 billion, but they're largely elderly, growing by
And no
a big margin.
females.
And they screwed themselves with the one-child birth law. You can only have one child. I mean, you look into it, you'll find all that stuff out. We are out of time, though, for the World Wide Web of Weird. I ran out of time, but my point is, this birthing farm, people are like, oh, this is sci-fi. This is not. China's looking at this. Like, they make it look like parents can control and, you know, they can monitor the baby in the pod and they can, you know, this will get into genetics. Watch the movie Gattaca. You're creating perfect children this way. This will get into children who are just born to be soldiers. Clone Wars, Star Wars, sorry. Literally, China needs soldiers. They need workers. This could be people build slaves with this, is what I'm saying. Countries that don't have any ethics or morals about doing it. Or when pushed to the point where we don't have a choice to think about ethics or morals, we will do it because populations decrease because we poisoned ourselves to death with all kinds of different crap in the society. And we've done it to ourselves. I don't know. Fears of the future for y'all for the new year. That's it for the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight's guest is Dr. Simeon Hein, author of Dark Matter Monsters, Cryptids, Ball Lightning, and the Science of Secret Life Forms. I'm excited to talk to him tonight. Hopefully, no technical difficulties. We'll have him here. I'm checking my email right now to make sure I don't have any issues. But we're going to go to commercial break. We'll be right back with our guest, hopefully, Dr. Simeon Hein.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
encounters of the second kind, physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind, contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It's a cosmic mystery crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It is called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Certificate A. Now showing at the Odeon, Leicester Square.
The international chart-topping, Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest has been described as terrifyingly real, a must-read, shocking and chilling brilliance, genuinely worrying, utterly frightening. Don't read before bed. Described as one of the spookiest writers out there, best-selling author G.L. Davies presents Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest, the true paranormal account that is shocking the world. Dare you enter? Dare you read? Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and wherever books are sold. Pray you never have to live there.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Switch to DCS Ranger.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe, 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Dr. Simeon Hein. He's a former university professor in statistics and research methods. He came across the idea of remote viewing in 1996 and took a look at it as a skeptic. As a result of the training were surprisingly positive and convinced Dr. Hein that there is a large area of scientific knowledge that is being withheld from the public discussion. Subsequently, they established nonprofit Institute of Resonance for residents and began teaching remote viewing classes in Boulder, Colorado, and continues to teach online. He also became interested in topics of crop circles, unexplained aerial phenomenon, and extraterrestrials. Tonight, we're going to talk about his book. I've been reading it. I'm not finished yet. I've been going through it. I have the Kindle version. I want to get a hard copy of this book. I love it so much. It's Dark Matter Monsters, Cryptids, Ball Lightning, and the Science of Secret Life Forms. On this show, from 7 years ago when I started it, I said to name this show Paranormal Soup because I believe there's some unified field theory for the paranormal that would explain why all these things have so many similarities and connections. And man, this book really hits home on a lot of these ideas. And I cannot wait to talk to our guests. We will open up the phone lines after the next commercial break if you want to call in with your questions tonight. We got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling on into it. All right, hopefully no technical problems. We got our guest here. Let me bring him aboard. How you doing tonight, Dr. Simeon Hein? Hein?
Hey there,
See how you say it?
Thanks for the nice introduction.
You say your last name Hein? Just make sure
Yeah,
I'm not
that's right.
butchering
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to call you Dr. Hein or Simeon or?
You can just call me Simeon. It's fine.
Simeon. Okay. Well, thank you. It's a true honor to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Our last show of 2022. I feel you're a great guest for this because your book I really am truly loving.
Thank you.
Because I am not a smart person, by any means. My dad is, and he is really into quantum physics. I would try to I read a lot of his books that he'd have on the shelf about a lot of these ideas and go over my head quite a bit. But my imagination is wild. I have a very big imagination. I've had a lot of paranormal experiences, and I've tried to take the stuff he's tried to teach me and think about how this relates to these experiences I've had. I've always thought about all these different connections from Bigfoot to ghosts to UFOs, abductions, dogmen sightings, how all these things have different similar characteristics that connect them in ways. And that's why I have the Paranormal Soup. That's why I named it, because I put a Bigfoot, alien, and a ghost in a soup bowl, because I believe they're all connected by something we don't understand yet. And your book really hits home on this.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I've been involved in these areas for about 25 years now, since I started my study of remote viewing, which led to getting interested in crop circles. Honestly, just to see what was going on there, since we had remote viewed them, I wanted to see if my sessions were accurate. And the only way would be to go over to the UK. And that led to meeting lots of UFO witnesses, because those sorts of people are interested in crop circles, meeting witnesses to strange effects around crop circles, including battery failure, camera failure, strange effects on magnetic compasses, magnetometers, and then seeing, exactly like you said, attending many UFO conferences and seeing what the witnesses were saying they were experiencing. And it was very similar often to what happened around crop circles. And then what I would find out happened around cryptids, Bigfoot, which really was one of the biggest surprises of my life, to find out that it's not just some sort of relic primate. I mean, people are having these weird electromagnetic experiences, time
telepathic.
Yes, thank you. It's like this mind talk. I mean, I didn't experience that the last time I went to a zoo. The gorillas were not projecting, not really, verbally coherent thoughts into my mind.
Unless you're Dr. Doolittle, no.
No, unless you're Dr. Doolittle, right? So that's really what the sort of brought this book together, is that, just like you said, there's just a lot of commonality in what we call paranormal phenomena, which must mean, from my training, that there's the same sort of scientific principles at work. Not to explain it away, just say there's aspects of science that we don't understand very well that are absolutely real. And
it's not like you're in your book, you're giving us, this is exactly what it is, and I've explained it all. No, you're catching the similarities and clues. And yes, there's the book. I got to get a hard copy of this. This definitely
hard copy now. Yeah,
I got to get a hard copy of this because I'm reading it on my Kindle. I'm like, I got to get a hard copy of this because I have a nice, very good, solid, big book collection. I'm like, this has got to be on my shelf because you really, we're gonna get into all this tonight.
Yeah,
you really hit home on a lot of the stuff my imagination's gone wild with. I'm just not smart enough to understand it all.
No, you are. It's just persistence. It's a lot of material. We're going into condensed matter physics.
Yeah.
Going back to Tesla, earlier Maxwell, and it all sort of comes together, all sort of makes sense after looking at it. But it'll take a while. It took me a while to, I'm not a physicist by training. It took me a while to see the bigger picture.
You're a statistician, and
right.
So, for you, for me, it was a green floating head I saw when I was 4 or 5 with my cousin that told me what everybody's telling me about the world's bullshit. Sorry, I'm cussing on my show.
Head?
When I was 4 or 5, me and my cousin Phil saw it. He thought it was a dream until I years later said, "You remember the green floating head? Turned white."
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I saw that with you, buddy. Long story short, right? But yeah, I saw that when I was a kid. I had a lot of paranormal experiences just up front, but that one is where I had the green background because that was the one at a very early age that told me people don't know what the heck they're talking about, and I've always been different than most people I know because I'm open to anybody's experience and not being a skeptical a-hole about it, and listening and not writing off anybody's experience. Because if I can see a green floating head that looked like the Wicked Witch of the West floating in a room screaming at me, anything's possible. That's what my thought was at 4 or 5. Like, screw these people. They don't know what they're talking about. This stuff's not real. I just saw it. And it has never left me. And I've had a lot of other experiences to confirm it. For you, what led you down this path? Especially being somebody who gets into statistics, you're analytical, you're a person of science. What led you down the path to go off the beaten path?
A very good question. And thanks for sharing your experience there. And, I guess I was really brought up to tell the truth and to stick with what the data tell you, regardless whether it's socially popular or not. I wasn't brought up to just fit in and conform it to what other people were doing. And when you encounter people who've had experiences like yours, and you encounter more of them and more of them, you realize there's a big untold story going on with our reality. And it's almost kind of appalling how poor our grasp of reality is. The main factor as a sociologist is that there's a fear of stigma being attached to you for talking about experiencing green floating heads or UFOs or cryptids. But I think a lot of the American population has experienced this, if not North America or the whole world. The more you talk about this, the more people will come forward to you once you've published a book like this and want to share their experiences. And it's so surprising to me. They said, I've never really told anyone about this before because I didn't know how people would react. I'm really beginning to wonder, just as a social scientist, how many people are experiencing what we call paranormal phenomena, which really suggests that there's an entirely different reality surrounding our ordinary normal reality that we're not talking about. We're not having a national discussion. And in some cases, people are being really scared very badly. They have PTSD from their encounters with cryptids or extraterrestrials. I mean, these things are out there. They're walking around. They're in our skies. And this is a serious issue. I mean, it's an issue of safety, national security. If people are encountering something every day somewhere in our country and they don't know where to go to talk to pick up the phone, who do you talk to about this? I've talked to a number of psychologists recently, and they told me they initially thought this might be a symptom of a delusional personality, schizophrenia, but then they kept hearing the same accounts from different patients. Dogmen, cryptids, formless figures that walk through walls. And they've come to me to say, well, what do you think's really going on here? Because I've given these people all the psychological tests, and they're normal, but they're experiencing these creatures and different types of life somewhere in their life, not all the time. We're not saying this happens, but somewhere they encountered this and they don't know. They come to the psychologist. The psychologist says, well, I'm not trained to. So I think this is a really big issue. It's going to completely redefine our sense of reality. Where it started for me, a UFO sighting with my mom in the Everglades. She was a bird watcher. She took me down to the Everglades, left Dad and my brother behind up in New York. And, I saw something overhead that looked like the full moon, just right in the 12 o'clock position up there. I said, Mom, look at the moon. It was so strange looking. It was greenish and it was glowing.
It was green?
Yeah, it was green. It was green. Just like maybe it was related to your floating head. I didn't know what it was at 11, but she said, well, the moon's over there. And there it was on the horizon. I looked over. I still remember the sense of shock. So I'm looking over at the moon. It's rising up over the Everglades there, the mangroves. So what's that? It's larger than a moon. It's round. It's glowing. Well, we both had binoculars because she was a bird watcher. We're looking at it. It's got this very even pattern of dots. And this is what I couldn't quite figure out. It looked amorphous and glowing, kind of like a cloud. So I'm thinking, well, we're near Cape Canaveral. Maybe a rocket blew up and it's the debris or some test.
Yeah.
That's what you'd think as an 11 or 12-year-old reasonable thing. But there's
pretty smart 12-year-old to think that too, though.
Yeah. That's what I remember thinking at the time. But then I'm looking, and there's these dots, and they form a Z, like Zeta. There's a dot.
Zeta Reticuli. I don't think the aliens are putting it on the side of their ship, but maybe.
It was like, it wasn't quite a letter, but you could kind of see a shape of the Z with dots. I'm thinking it's amorphous, but there are these dots underneath. But then another thing happens. It starts moving. It was like absolutely stationary. All of a sudden it moves fast.
And it's obviously big if you thought it was the moon. It's
big,
substantial in size. Yeah,
big, a couple miles up, but it looked as big
Wow.
as the moon. And so then it moves into a cloud, and then we sort of feel like we should leave, And so we go over to the ranger talk that night. We notice all the lights are out. There's a blackout. So we sit down, and
That's
the
interesting.
ranger says, "Did anybody see anything interesting today?" My mom raises her hand. "We saw a UFO." She was open to this stuff.
Yeah.
And she says, the ranger said, "That's interesting. Does anyone else want to share what they saw today?"
No other inquiry on that? Like, ooh, what happened? Oh my God,
Yeah,
tell
I
us.
was
No.
a little disappointed.
Move along, people.
Yeah,
Nothing to
move along.
see.
Even as a teenager, I said, "Well, where's the curiosity there? I mean, what was that?" And the people sitting right next to us on the bench, this couple, had seen it too. So there's 4 of us in a row. It's a blackout.
You guys are probably like holding your hands up, like, what, man?
Yeah, like, what's going on? I mean, you know what it's like.
Yeah.
Remember Geddy Lee from Rush, the vocalist, and he used to say, "Don't ever do anything that would violate your norms that you had as a teenager to stay true to yourself." Well, that's sort of applied here. I'm thinking, well, what's going on? This is a representative of the government. We really saw something. These people saw it. Now, what was that? You could have said rocket test. I mean, I couldn't make.
You're lucky I wasn't the kid there, because I would have not let him off of the hook. You can ask my parents. I was most annoying kid on any kind of like vacation tour trip with anybody that was like an employee at a park.
Well, we didn't let her off the hook. We went up.
Good.
My mom was like a little miffed.
Oh,
we
good.
Went up to her, and my mom said, "Look, it's a blackout. It must have been from the UFO." And the ranger said, "Oh, blackouts."
I love your mom.
Yeah, blackouts. Yeah, I must have gotten this from her. Blackouts happen all the time in lower Florida here. Anyway, we weren't convinced. And so if you ask where this all started, my mom to this day, and she's 92 now, I'm going back to visit her on the East Coast tomorrow. She says that they got you. That's when they got you. They zapped you. Right there. And that's why
Tell your mom she's awesome when you see her. Tell her, Jason Bland for Paranormal Soup. She won't know who I am, but just say she's awesome.
I'll tell her that, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, like, one of the things reading your book, we're going to get into the topic of these shared phenomenon between, like, ghost sightings, UFO sightings. My one UFO sighting. Ooh, I'm getting an echo. It's gone? Okay. My one UFO sighting, I was 16 with about 4 other individuals, also 16. We're all getting ready to go home for the night. We're all smoking cigarettes. I shouldn't be puffing them down, so we're going to try to get the smell off while we're outside, right? Because we're all going home. And I suddenly get this weird, like, buzzing in my head, this just weird feeling, and just this, for whatever reason, I look up. What happened at the same time is we all did. We all looked up. And this cylindrical craft it was like the scene of Star Wars where the Star Destroyer goes over your head, in the opening. It was like that coming up over my head, 600 feet up, maybe above Michigan City, Indiana. Downtown, middle of the night. I'm thinking it's 11 o'clock at night. It's lights from the city, the hospital. It goes towards the hospital and just silently goes. And nobody says a word. This is way before anybody had cell phones. I wish I'd had a cell phone with a picture, but I don't think I would have taken a picture. I was literally stunned in silence. There was no lights on this thing. It had like a boxy kind of like shapes in the structure, but that was it. No lights, and it just silently, and it went away. And I remember all of us going, "What was that?" And then we went home. The next day, only one of the 4 that was with me admitted to seeing it. The others were like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, we saw it up there. The other person, I had to like drag it out of them. But the other ones, I never to this day understood if it was denial, did not look weird, or it was literally true. They don't remember.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I got to tell you something similar to that related. I found out a couple of years ago that in my high school class, I think in 11th grade, that the gym team, the wrestling team was at a competition at a neighboring high school. And I found out just a few years ago that they all saw a huge triangular craft in, I believe, would be the late 70s.
That'd be a good time period for it,
Yeah, Hudson Valley area, but before the wave, the Hudson Valley UFO. And I didn't hear about it because they were so terrified. They didn't want to talk, kind of like what you're saying. Now, I talked to the wrestling coach. I put it on my YouTube channel, Vinny, what they saw. They even called the police. And the police said, there's a power outage in all those towns right around where you had the sighting. Vinny, the wrestling coach, reported jets coming out of Connecticut, F-16s chasing this object, which he said took off like the Starship Enterprise on warp from a stationary to heading in the direction of New Jersey. to go, mystify those people over there on the other side of the Hudson. And yet I didn't hear about it till a few years ago. And we're talking decades have gone by. And I was told that one of the kids said it was the scariest thing he ever saw. It was a huge black triangle not too far above the gym in the high school. It was up in the sky, but I mean, not too far up, and hovering there. And I mean, it's enough to make you call the police. And what would have done that in late 70s, 1980 or so? So people don't talk about these things, and that's the real issue here. These are hidden events that people experience, and this is what we call it in sociology, hidden events. People experience them, and they don't want to talk. Just like child abuse in the 60s, it took a couple national meetings of professionals to actually
Isn't that crazy?
Such a thing. Right. So I think I wrote about, I mentioned that in Dark Matter Monsters.
Yeah.
This happens not just to our paranormal topics.
No, look at the Epstein thing going on now. I mean, how long? I've been doing this show for 7 years. I brought this up the very first year of the show about Epstein.
You did.
And I don't get big in conspiracies. I was just making a point about like, this is going on. Nobody wants to talk about it in the media. And now here we are. It's like you talk about this in the book, how it takes time for us to open up our minds to a reality. Until then, it's not real. We don't see it.
I think that's true, even in the most open society in the world that we consider ourselves to be here in the U.S. It can take years or decades for these topics to be something that people feel comfortable admitting that they've experienced, willing to talk about. I guess first it starts at parties. Sometimes you mention these topics or gathering of folks, and you sort of, people say, "Are you interested in this?" It just sort of comes up. I've had it happen at conferences where it just and it wasn't these sort of conferences, academic conferences.
Yeah.
But someone will mention it, and I kind of waiting to see.
Yeah. We gotta be careful.
It's very interesting, but things do change. We don't see it because we're only so many years old, but you have to think how the U.S. was 100 years ago, 150 years. It's changed a lot. And it'll keep changing in this direction because of shows like this and what's going on politically right now. There's obviously a lot of turmoil within our government about releasing information about UFOs. It's clearly or
JFK assassination, as I talked about on my show.
There's a lot to go around. There's a lot to go around. And the UAP topic, same sort of UFO. I mean, you can label it. You can use all this jargon. That's a way of hiding it. We know that bureaucracies hide topics by giving them kind of long acronyms, which has been applied now to these names
or just pure out gaslighting us at times. I mean, it's frustrating.
It's strange, but I do think, Jason, the truth, I don't think you can hold it back eventually. It just takes a few people and
Art Bell said this. It's like a snowball effect. Once the cat's out of the bag, which it is, it's a snowball effect, and more questions are asked, and it just keeps happening. Yeah, it keeps happening.
Yeah.
What are you being in the position you are now, writing the books you have, you also wrote Black Swan Ghost, which I want to read in Opening Minds, get into remote viewing. You're open, so people are going to come to you and talk to these things. So this is what's great about, people having these discussions. It opens it up, and more people come to you. I'm lucky. This guy can confirm it here. Damage D is a friend of mine. We play a game called Star Wars Squadrons, and we actually, just by me doing the show and being open about it, we have a pilot with us who speaks no English in our squad, who was a French pilot. He actually flew in Belgium in 1990 in the Belgian wave. And was a witness to the triangle UFOs. I would have never told me this. I had our other friend from Quebec translate this whole experience he had of seeing these. And that, I would have never had that if I hadn't thrown out my fear of people ridiculing me when I tell them I do a paranormal show and I'm interested and believe this.
To you. I love it. That is how it happens, is you aren't afraid and you give someone else a little courage for them to tell their story. Did you learn anything from talking to him about the Belgian UFO?
It was very similar to Terry. I know you know Terry Lovelace because you might talk about it in your book.
There you go.
And Terry Lovelace is a friend of mine. The size comparison was very similar to his size comparison, what he saw in Devil's Den.
Huge triangle,
So these things were huge, and they were if I gotta remember this right. Damage D, their Captain Damage, is in the chat room. He was there for the store. What was told to us. They had no radar signal.
No radar signal.
They couldn't lock onto it.
1990,
Yeah.
That big.
I mean, this thing's huge. How does that? what's he say? Oh yeah, that was a night.
Yeah, it didn't look like this. We understand why this doesn't have a radar signal.
Right.
We were just using this as a remote viewing target tonight in my class. I just have to.
Really?
Yeah, you can understand why this, in the size it is with the angle, is not going to return a radar signature. But what about something huge like a big black triangle that's a mile long on either side, or half a mile, or even a quarter mile? They're huge.
Yeah,
return a radar signal.
Yeah, there's so much to get into. These subjects. I mean, the big one on this one, for you, I guess, would be the Bigfoot area.
Right.
It is a leap. I'm a paranormal investigator. I do a lot of, I've not anymore so much, but I used to do a lot of residential investigations where people have an activity. I've always been into UFOs. I was like 10 years old when I'm an Ancient Aliens kind of guy. I read Eric Von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods like that. My mom had that on her bookshelf. I had cool parents. So I'm very lucky. I've been in all these weird topics for a long time. Bigfoot was one I've always been interested in, but I'm in Indiana. Not many Bigfoot sightings near Michigan City, Indiana, or witnesses, but I've now doing the show, I've gotten more and more into it. My kids love it. They love anything to do with Bigfoot or Dogmen, especially Dogmen. And I've now gotten really deep into this subject, not as deep as people that I've had on the show, but what for you turned you on to this? I mean, it's easy to get into. Maybe this is a criticism of the Bigfoot thing, but it's easy to get into the UFO or ghost factor. These are phenomenons I think lots and lots of people have. Bigfoot's more isolated to areas, certain areas.
No, it's a very good question. I, like many other people, saw the Patterson-Gimlin film in the 70s. It was actually a preview when movies had previews.
Yeah.
I went to a movie with my brother, and this was the preview in 1973 or 4. Yeah, and I remember seeing the Patterson-Gimlin film. They showed it. It was sort of a mock documentary, and they had some loggers out there. And you could see it was a setup, but they played the film. And I was really interested. What was that? Now, I have to say a lot of the spin we've heard around Bigfoot is that it's a relic primate, it's Gigantopithecus, which there's no evidence.
It's a divide in the community at times.
It's a big divide. And so when I listened to Art Bell and some of the people he had on, like Lauren Coleman, it sounded reasonable to me.
Yeah.
I went to school in the Northwest, Washington State University. I mean, Grover Krantz was upstairs from me in the sociology department, same building. And I just thought, well, it's a very rare ape, like we were told. And, I'll probably never encounter it. And I guess some such things could exist, rare animals. And, that seemed to work for a while until I encountered witnesses.
The hidden story.
Yeah, at UFO conferences, I heard people speak about this at UFO conferences. And at first it seemed sort of unbelievable that, an escaped gorilla could become invisible. And you'd see these pictures where it was sort of there, sort of not, that predator effect that we're familiar with now. What really changed it for me, it's very interesting to examine when did you start believing in something? What changed your mind? And I think about this a lot. It was encountering witnesses at UFO conferences. And I have to say, I couldn't quite make sense of what they were saying. It didn't quite make sense and fit in the idea of a relic primate. Why would you get orbs? Why would you get these time slips? I mean, I couldn't, does not compute.
Brain fog.
Brain fog. I started encountering these witnesses. What was that?
Telepathy.
But so eventually I encountered witnesses in my RV classes here in Boulder, Colorado. These are local people from Colorado, from the Front Range. And, during lunch and during breaks, they would share their stories. And it's like a cumulative effect. I think it's just like the same with all these topics. I knew these people. Some of them I got to know very well. They insisted they had the telepathy. One woman said she saw it in her mind's eye. Barbara, I have her on my YouTube channel. She said she saw it in her mind's eye and heard a scream. And then her friend downstairs in the same house actually saw it through the kitchen door windows.
Wow.
And I said, and it looked like what you had seen in your mind. She said, exactly. So it had projected its image to her mind upstairs as she was going to sleep. And then there were other witnesses over the years. Sometimes scary encounters. One fellow I know had said he had been pulled out of a sleeping bag in the middle of the night.
That's as scary as you get.
Right. And there wasn't anyone camped there. And you just don't do that in states like this where there's a high rate of gun ownership. You're not just going to open up someone's tent unless you're really insane. But it was the scariest thing that had ever. And this is a big guy, and he said the strength with which it pulled him out of the sleeping bag, it's like really strong and fast. So fast you couldn't get out. It's like you were stuck at the foot of the bag, and he's over 6 feet tall.
Wow.
These sort of things accumulate, and you sort of say, well, how does it make sense? Well, I finally visited the Bailey Sasquatch Outpost in Bailey, Colorado, about an hour from here. And there was the map of the entire Front Range, and then it focused in on this area. And there were all the footprints, sounds, the sightings. Right here, within a few miles of my apartment here, there were sightings. And when you went to the BFRO website, the person said, well, I was afraid to report it because I'm a biology student at CU just down the road, and I didn't want it to affect my career. So 10 years later, they reported to BFRO. And you're thinking, they saw freaking Sasquatch just in the park right over there. I mean, it's just 5 minutes up the road for me to drive over there. And there it is, and you'd see it was in one of the mountain towns. Some kid said a monster put its face in a window 8 feet off the ground. Again, it starts to accumulate, and then it starts to getting closer. It gets closer and closer, and then you realize it's actually happening right around you. It could be happening right now. You're not hearing about it because it's a hidden event. And so it's sort of all of these things. It's kind of a cumulative effect. Then talking to witnesses, finally going to some of these day events held by the Sasquatch Outpost. You talk to the witnesses, and there you really hear these stories of the brain fog, the cameras going off, failing. Phones stopped working. People who said, yeah, we saw it. A bunch of us saw it. There were just a couple of them right there on the trail. It's really close. And so you realize there's a whole community of people around you that have seen this, and that it's not a relic primate at all. In fact, it's not even anything like, it has ape-like characteristics. Sure, the whooping sound, some of the posture and so forth, but there's much more that's like humans than apes, but not humans like we normally
And they
know.
differ. Like, if you go different, you have the skunk ape in Florida. You have the descriptions of what they are in Tibet. It's different from what they are described like maybe in Washington.
They differ. They sometimes people describe them. Yeah, it's you start reading these accounts. Sometimes people say it looked like a caveman on all fours.
Yeah, I've heard that.
The kind of caveman appearance, right? And then some appearances, they said it looked kind of like a cross between a cat, a feline, and an ape. It didn't look anything all like humans. And then there are
dogmen.
And then you have which could be a type of Sasquatch. We don't really know. And then you get the accounts that said, no, it really felt human. It looked sort of primate-like, but it acted like a human, the way it looked at us. Then you hear reports of it talking. You hear recordings of its speech. Ron Moorhead, Sierra Sounds. So anyway, to answer your question, I know it's kind of long-winded.
Go listen to Sierra Sounds, Ron Moorhead. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I've interviewed him, and he experienced this more than most people going up to that Sierra hunting air camp that they had put up there in the national forest. And I think he said 9 times they encountered them. So you hear the sounds, their speech, their reverse samurai language going back and forth. And then you start reading, and there's all these accounts from Forest Service workers, park rangers, which these stories, you can find these books on Amazon of different authors these seem to be collections of stories that people have submitted to them. And they seem very authentic to me, which is you get these park rangers who say, look, my boss told me not to talk about this.
Right.
Even cases of them finding bodies in national parks, buried in avalanches or stuff, or snow.
Missing 411 really covers how much they don't want to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Then you get to David Paulides, and it actually seems to make sense. You have more evidence from him that the Park Service and the National Forest Services do not want to talk about this. And yet at the same time, we've seen the reporting forms that they have. They have them in the Sasquatch Outpost. Someone who worked there said she just saw it on the desk. It was a Bigfoot reporting form. And at the very bottom, it said, joke reports will not be entered into the database. So they want you to have a series where this is from Hood National Forest. I think I read even prior to that, the Army Army Corps of Engineers in Washington State had a couple pages on Bigfoot sightings in Washington State. They do a lot of work.
The FBI actually investigated Bigfoot too.
FBI. So you put all this together and you realize you have a huge hidden event going on here. People are experiencing it. Professionals don't want to damage their career. People that work out in forest areas, rural areas that see this, they are told, we don't scare people at the Park Service, so don't talk about it. And yet, some of these encounters can be, let's be honest, some of them are very scary to these park rangers. They're out there by themselves in very remote areas doing catalogs of wildflowers or fish or whatever they happen to be doing. And those Bigfoot seem to be very territorial. And I agree, just like that person says in that movie, A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, that recent documentary. There's one of the witnesses there, someone who knows about this. I mean, I'm tempted to say experts, but there really are no experts because we don't really know what we're dealing with.
Nobody knows.
Right. No one really knows, myself included, but it seems to be as much diversity in our experiences with Bigfoot as you would have as a person visiting other countries. And even in our own country, the amount of experiences you could have with other people ranging from very friendly and helpful to criminal.
Yeah.
Right. And that seems to be, I think we should be honest with what's going on here with Bigfoot and Sasquatch. To me, it seems the same. A lot of the experiences are good. They rescue people who fall in. They pull kids out of streams where they would have drowned. They put cars back on the road. We've heard reports of them riding cars and rescuing people in very dangerous situations and feeding them. But there's also reports of them pushing cars off the road and
throwing rocks at people. Yeah.
Throwing big rocks, rocks that enough to damage your car. And one person told me the other day, didn't think the insurance company would believe him. It was a radio show. It was a podcast like this. And he told me his experience after the show was over. They were trying to get out of there. This thing was throwing huge rocks. And by the end of the trip, they weren't even friends anymore. The two hikers, the guy said, well, we can't talk about this. My father's a judge.
Terry's talked about this.
My brother's a big lawyer. And it would be associated with my name, so I don't ever want to talk about it again. And this other guy, Gary, was absolutely appalled. Here they are, researchers in these sort of subjects. They had never seen Bigfoot. And this guy's all of a sudden, I don't ever want to talk about it again. It's a strange situation. But anyway, this is a long-winded answer to your question. It's a lot of experiences of people I got to know. Some of them even wrote me. I have to say I'm sorry to whoever this was, because I met them at a conference and they wrote to me, said, Simeon, how come you haven't gotten back to me? I have all these good stories about Sasquatch. And I had forgotten to contact him. And they were good stories. Actually, he had a story of his aunt being rescued after being thrown from a horse. And Bigfoot picked her off the trail where she would have been trampled by other horses. And another story of a guy that was falling off a cliff and was like holding on by roots, and a big hairy hand came over. And I didn't get back to him because I think, if you can't quite put it in some box in your mind, you don't know what to do with it. Is it a primate? What are we dealing with here? And it just takes a while at least for me, to kind of see where it fits and to see how important it is, and to realize you've been blind. It's been around you. And I'm beginning to wonder just what you said a few minutes ago. Are many of us having these experiences and not even remembering it? Because in the documentary, A Flash of Beauty, you have these psychiatrists saying at the end, it's not just PTSD we're talking about here. We're literally talking about people forgetting their experiences with the paranormal because the physical brain doesn't know what to do with the experience.
Can't translate it.
The floating head. What do you do? And as kids, we're not as skeptical, so we remember these, but I think an adult experiencing the floating head, we're lucky to have Terry Lovelace around. And I asked him the other day, I said, Terry, did it take was it the x-ray that reminded you of the implants?
Yeah.
He had forgotten about a lot of this too. And
we and him have talked about this a lot.
He forgot Terry, and now he's such an advocate, and he's written 2 great books. I love
He awakened my mind to an experience I had in Red River Gorge, Kentucky.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, and like I said, from an early age, I saw the green floating head. I've been into all this stuff. Don't question it. But when it came to this experience in Red River Gorge, Kentucky, I wrote it off. And it has to do with aliens. Basically, I was in a tent with a buddy, And we went to bed that night with my boots on, which I always do when I was camping, because if I had to run, I need my boots on. I went to sleep with my boots on. I had this very vivid dream where I was floating up above the river gorge. I was floated up out of my tent, and there's a bright light behind me. And something's talking to me telepathically, telling me it's all right, don't panic. I wasn't. I was like, this is amazing. Like, I'm flying. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm in a lucid dream because I've had a few lucid flying dreams. But this thing's talking to me, and I remember pulling me into some kind of, I don't see it. I never saw it. All I saw was a bright light, but maybe a ship. And I remember being somewhere. Then I wake up. It's early morning. Sun's just starting to creep up. And I am turned around in my tent. My friend's not in the tent. My boots are off, which are not easy to get off. And like I said, I always camp with my boots on. So it was a little weird. And then I go out and talk to my friend, and we're at this cliff that looks over Red River Gorge Valley. And we see this huge, a massive light shoot up out of the woods, up into the sky. And that was really it. And then we had my shadow person experience months later, me and the same friend with another person. And that I never forgot. I talked about my whole shadow person experience, which I was tortured and terrorized by some kind of entity. That's a whole other long story. But I always would talk about that, but I never thought about what might have kicked it off was this experience out camping. And was I taken? I don't think I'm an abductee, but in that moment, was I? Was I just a pickup or something happened? And I've had other experiences I just considered dreams. I wrote all those off and never would look at them. Like my brain was wired not to look at them. It really took Terry Lovelace's book, Incident at Devil's Den, to bring that back into my mind. Like I would just refuse to look at it. So his experience opened up my experience.
That's how it works, isn't it? Yeah. Fascinating. His experience brought back and you had forgotten about it? It just pushed,
just pushed it out of my mind. With all the weird stuff I'd always talk about and I'm interested in.
I think it's very easy for any of us, no matter how open we are to these topics, to not remember things that don't kind of lose their linear kind of sense of time. I don't think we're good at remember, like we forget our dreams as we wake up. I think it's an analogy to that. It's another state of consciousness, and I don't think we remember. I can't remember. I don't remember not remembering anything. I haven't encountered any cryptids that I can remember. And I haven't been taken aboard any craft, at least not recently.
That you can remember.
But
can you remember, though? That's the thing.
That is the question. I am sure that there are things happening that I probably am not remembering. Because this is what it's like for many people is they don't remember it. And you're like Terry's story reminded you of some things. I've actually started remembering things too. I made a video on my YouTube channel just about a week ago that I had seen a ball of light in the sky over a field where crop circles had shown up in the past. And I didn't even put it in Dark Matter Monsters. And it's about ball lightning.
That's a big point.
I forgot about it. I sort of forgot about it. I couldn't decide if it was a UFO or an orb or what I had been looking at. It was definitely
fascinated by ball lightning and orbs for whatever reason. I don't know.
I have a video on YouTube. I have the video. I had uploaded the video, and I somehow. So if someone like me, I'm sure this applies to anyone listening here. If I'm writing a book about, and the subtitle is Cryptids, Ball Lightning, and the Science of Secret Life Forms, you would have thought that author would have put all their ball lightning sightings. Personally, it just isn't somewhere in there. I only mentioned one, but this other one, which was really big, and helicopters came out and went towards it, and it just disappeared as the helicopters got close. And yet somehow
your brain didn't go to it.
Yeah, it just didn't quite click. And I finished the book in about a couple of weeks ago. I said, well, why didn't I put that in the book? I mean, it's a really you got the helicopter, military helicopter, everything. I don't know. I think it's just we're not as conscious as we think we are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree 100%.
We're overconfident in our sense of reality, even myself included.
Yeah. I mean, it's like my cousin, Phil, we were 4 or 5. Just the difference in the two of us and our personalities is I held on to it. This was real. Never forgot it. Knew it wasn't a dream. He, when I talked to him about it when we were 13, had wrote it off as a dream. Never happened. It was just a dream. And I've done that with other things I think maybe in my life that I wrote off as just dreams that might not have been. It's easy for the brain to, it's a memory. It's not real anymore. It's not here in front of us to compartmentalize it and put it somewhere as not explainable, not real. Forget about it.
Right. It's so interesting, isn't it? We just don't really know ourselves as well as we think we do. And it's very easy for things to slip between the cracks in our memory.
What's your what do you think though? Like for like, I mean, in another scenario, I do remember, while other people didn't, was seeing the UFO at downtown Michigan City when I was 16. 4 of those people just either didn't want to admit it or they forgot it, but I didn't. You know, like it makes me wonder, like, is there a technology that can be built to wipe people's minds? Because this is technology I think I'm seeing in the air. You know, like
that has always been the suspicion that we have screen memories, that these visitors from other places are, because you talk to witnesses and there's one in Black Swan Ghosts, and I didn't put that story here. I put her story. I forgot what I called her in the book. This is, a collection of all these UFO witnesses I've encountered. And some of them are really good stories, even people that have worked for NASA and, aerospace companies who handled what they're absolutely convinced is extraterrestrial craft material, ET material. They were told how to figure out how it works, and they said it was just totally unlike anything we would do here on Earth. Fascinating story. So one of these women, you're just reminding me of a story she told me. She remembered being on the beach in it was a Caribbean island somewhere with her husband, and they remember encountering bunnies, huge bunnies that walked on 2 legs. And she said, and she told me her story in here is about seeing a triangular UFO from an apartment building in the Bronx overlooking the Hudson, and remembering other people with their heads out the window, and then later wondering, was it a dream or not? But it's so concrete, and this did happen. I read about an account that someone who saw it right in her neighborhood too. So here's another person that remembered it, but she wasn't sure, which would make sense.
She was ready to write it off as a dream. It never happened.
Yes, exactly. But so many other people experienced it. It put her in that state of mind. But she told me another story of seeing these creatures on the beach that they later were wondering, years later, wait a minute, there aren't any huge bunnies on a beach in the Caribbean walking on 2 legs. They don't exist, but that was in the memory. So was it a screen memory? It's a really good question. And I think part of this, our conscious mind does to protect ourselves from a sense of uncertainty and weirdness, because let's be honest, we're all interested in this topic, but there are probably certain things that would really scare any of us beyond a certain level of healthiness. Even a UFO, for those of us that are interested, we say we'd love to see one, right? But how would you stand there? Would you?
My wife says no. She would run. My wife is so afraid of alien abduction.
One of the cases in Black Swan Ghosts is of this jockey that I knew in the crop circle area that was a jockey for the Queen, and he reported seeing something landing with light coming out every few seconds behind this fog as the disc came down on the downs in Surrey, the hills. And he said his friend literally went into such a panic that he peed himself right there. And then this fellow Peter, who wanted to meet this occupant, as the door opened and it starts huge, very tall in this kind of skin tight suit, is walking towards them. He remembers this at one. He so badly wanted to meet the ETs. He had seen these things as a kid come over the town. Oh, it's my space people. He said to me that he started to feel like a sense of panic with his friend just pulling on him. Peter, we got to go. So we're susceptible to these things, even though we're all interested in this. What would any of us do listening to this show right now, any of us right here, if a huge triangular craft like Terry Lovelace experienced and others have experienced?
Run, you're going to have a bad time.
Right, because Terry's experience with Toby wasn't that, we wouldn't call that a great experience. Just as an understatement in that craft, right? They wake up in the tent a couple hours later and they're burned.
Yeah,
and their memories are it's hostile. Whatever their memories are, they don't remember totally, but it wasn't friendly. I mean, Terry told me the other day he doesn't have bad feelings about this anymore. He doesn't feel any sense of right, and that's healthy. I'm glad he doesn't carry this around. He feels resentful to whoever did this, but they didn't remember. It's all of a sudden they're back in the tent, and so what would any of us do? So I think that our minds are protecting us from a degree of unknown that might put us, might make us go insane. And that wouldn't be a good thing. We wouldn't have shows like this if one of us ends up going nuts. So, I mean, I think it's something we have to gradually, myself included, gradually absorb the data. And then all of a sudden it switches, it flips. And you realize, holy moly, this whole story we've been told since we were little kids in kindergarten, it's all wrong.
Yeah. It's an artificial matrix of
wrong. It's a story they told us to make us
might as well be Santa Claus.
Yeah, it's all different. It's totally different than they told you. And it's not their fault. They were told this by their parents and their teachers.
But there's people who've known that.
There people who have known that know it, and they didn't tell us because they must have thought they were protecting, or maybe it was during the Cold War with the Soviet Union. I don't know what the logic is, but they didn't tell us about any of this. And it's a totally different reality. Any one of us going outside could encounter anything outside your door. It could be a dog man. It could be an extraterrestrial. It could be an interdimensional being. It could be one of the little people. This could happen to any of us pretty much anywhere except a really dense urban area. Even there, you read encounters with cryptids that people are totally shocked to see them on the roof of an neighboring apartment building or something. Totally shocked. And it's one thing for people that go outdoors, and I've spoken to these people who say, I never want to go in the woods again. I'm never camping by myself again.
Right.
But what about when you see it right in a very dense urban area in Jersey City or Manhattan, and it's right there on the roof? None of your neighbors are going to believe you. These are
right.
Sort of
who are you going to tell without sounding like a lunatic?
Exactly. They don't tell anybody. And, there's no one you can really call who can deal with this because law enforcement, they have got classifications, either human or it's an animal. They call animal control. And, a big hairy beast like this, where does it fit in? They don't even know how to classify it. Or maybe they do. And maybe like we're being told by some of these authors that law enforcement does know what's going on. They encounter it themselves because they're out all night cruising around.
They don't know what's going on, but they might encounter it, but they don't know what it is either.
But their superiors tell them, you saw a bear.
Yeah.
You just saw a bear. And isn't what you hear over and over again from Forest Service workers and law enforcement? It's a bear. There's a bear. There's a bear. Well, listen, bears don't just keep walking like that on two legs. I've seen bear get up on two legs. They look around, they go back down. They don't just keep walking unless they have an injury or something that prevents them from using the front paws. So it's a whole different story. And I'm just wondering, how long is it going to take for society to figure this out? Because it's quite a different reality. I mean, even for me, it took me this long to figure it out. And I kind of say this towards the end of Dark Matter Monsters. I've been around a number of decades. I'm over a half a century old. How long does it take to really understand what's going on? And then you begin to wonder, I'm sure many of our people the folks in our audience have wondered this too. Does anyone really know what's going on with reality? Or is everyone just sort of faking it? And the professionals in charge, the people and authorities, they just do their best to brush it over. You saw a bear, you saw a weather balloon, you saw a flock of geese, as we've been hearing for decades. And it's really different than that. And nobody really understands it. And that is really an interesting place to be, is that, again, you could encounter anything out there any day of the week. Maybe you forget about it, maybe you don't. But I just think that's really interesting and exciting at the same time.
Well, I think we have a construct reality we've made as a society of humans over thousands of years, and as we've been advanced technology-wise and science is advanced, that we've constructed. This is what we believe reality is, and academics are a big part of this, and they don't want to deviate from that construct. And if they do, it endangers the construct of what we accept as official reality.
Oh yeah.
And any endangerment to that is a big no. Especially in academia.
It's a big no. Isn't that surprising?
Even in archaeology. Archaeology is what kills me the most. I have friends and guests that are archaeologists on the show. It's like they completely hide and ignore blatant facts of history and evidence that there is a lot more that went on in our ancient past than has ever been discussed in any university, any historical book.
I read this magazine every week. I've had a subscription for 30 years. I learn a lot from this magazine.
Yeah.
I have learned a lot about condensed matter.
I think my dad has
physics.
a subscription.
It helped me understand some of these phenomena, but honestly, seriously, they never touch any of these topics.
Nope.
It's so rare. Once every 10 years, you'll get a letter about. I have 30 years of reading this magazine. Once every 10 years, you'll get a letter about UFOs saying, "Oh, maybe it's time. It's time to engage it." Right. One article about remote viewing by Targan put off, I think, in 70 before I subscribed, and they won't touch these topics at all. I'm waiting for some serious Bigfoot something.
No,
I call it a
I don't think it'll
relic
ever happen.
primate, a gigantopithecus. I know something, because look, you got a lot of people experiencing this, but you're absolutely right, Jason. And I've gone through the academic system. I've been through it, and I have to say, it's a bit of a hoax.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna.
That's what I said. It's a false reality construct.
People may be mad at me for saying that. It's a hoax, because you just simply, you do not touch topics that are going to hurt your career, your promotion, your tenure, your grants. Nobody's going to do that. And I understand it. You put a lot of time into getting a PhD. I did it. Anyone who's done it, it's years and years. But boy,
there's a quote in your book I actually highlighted. I want to say that really epitomizes this.
Disappointment. They won't do anything for us.
There's a quote you have in your book. I want to quote this.
It makes me want to cry. It makes me want to cry, guys.
It does, but I think this quote summarizes it, because we got to go to commercial.
Yeah, go ahead.
Break here. It's like a self-affecting negative feedback loop of ignorance and denial. I was like, that epitomizes it right there. They have to keep protecting this construct of reality.
Exactly right. The ivory tower, and society put a lot of time and energy into anyone who has a higher degree. A lot of effort and money went into you. You owe it back to society to tell the truth.
Yep.
Not just to take money.
Not to get your grant.
Yeah, and the different companies that want to sponsor you if you say what they want you to say. AstroTurfing and all this. The whole thing has been bought out. It is so freaking corrupt. But it will self-correct. Reality wins in the end.
Truth eventually prevails.
It will. You want a scientific revolution, you're going to have it. The data builds up, and eventually, boom, you got Copernicus, you get Galileo, all the evidence is in that direction.
Giordano Bruno,
Hello.
they burnt him at a stake.
They burn people at the stake. They do.
He was way ahead of his time. We got to go to commercial break. Got a lot more to talk about, and we'll open up the phone lines when we come back. Yes, call in after the commercial break. We'll be back with our guest, Dr. Simeon Hein. We're talking about his book, Dark Matter Monsters, Cryptids, Ball Lightning, and the Science of Secret Life Forms. Truly enjoying this book. You guys definitely got to check it out, but we're going to go to commercial break. We'll take your calls when we come back.
Into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign-up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.paranormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift, a refreshing and fun read. I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
Edgar Allan Poe wrote Spirits of the Dead with a pen dipped in warm blood. You will see the ultimate in terror with this important all-star cast. Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda in Edgar Allan Poe's Spirits of the Dead. Only Poe's demented genius could bring to the screen such horror and evil. Spirits of the Dead stars Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda. Directed by three masters of the cinema, Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. Spirits of the Dead is an adventure in terror beyond your wildest nightmares. Spirits of the Dead in color is rated R.
Please, Spock, do me a favor. And don't say it's fascinating. No. But it is interesting.
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419 or by Skype caller ID 00JBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is Dr. Simeon Hein, author of Dark Matter Monsters, Cryptids, Ball Lightning, and the Science of Secret Life Forms. Really enjoying this book. You guys got to definitely check it out. I got the Kindle version I'm reading right now. I definitely want to get the hardback version of this book and have it on my shelf because it really gets into all the stuff we talk about all the time on this show. How I feel all these different phenomenons are connected. Be it UFOs or ghosts or Bigfoot or Dogman or Goatman, as my kids love all that stuff. That there's something, a unified field theory, whatever, for this that connects all these things. And I think he really gets close to that. Not saying he has the answers or anything in this book, but he really gets into some subjects when it comes to, and yes, it can go over some of our heads, my own included, but some of the factors of like coherent matter and dark matter and how energy is, these that there could be other life forms and reality around us happening all the time. We don't realize that it utilizes this form of matter to manifest or be here or do these incredible things like telekinesis or telepathy or you know, all the strangeness that it comes with these phenomenon are all connected by some form of energy. We get into that. I am not the one to talk about that. Our guest, Dr. Simeon Hein, is. And if you got questions tonight, phone lines are now open. Let me make sure they're open. You can call in, join this discussion. I have questions. I'm sure you will too. But definitely you want to check out the book. But let's go ahead and get back to our guest. All right. Phone lines are open, guys. You can call in if you want to join this conversation. Like I said, I am not very as smart as some other people, and I am not a scientist, and I've only had a interest in it. So reading your book, there are a lot of principles and things you get into. We talk about like coherent matter, dark matter,
right?
Dark matter being in the title.
Yeah, dark matter, very important.
What else? You know, a lot of these things that play into this kind of. I don't know if you want to say you're getting into theory or not on this. How you want to name it? I haven't finished the book yet, but how these things might play in and the phenomenon around them and cold fusion.
Yeah, it's
and
just
the relationship.
We're just looking at the underlying similarities between what we call paranormal phenomena and coherent matter, which cold fusion, what we call cold fusion, low energy nuclear reaction, as it's now called. There's a lot of similarities there. And even people that work with cold fusion, Leonard, experience battery failure, strange effects on their electronics, transformers burning out, just like we saw our cameras and batteries around crop circles and people experience around cryptids too.
Or paranormal investigations at haunted locations. That's my forte.
Exactly.
I've seen it happen.
Yes, haunted. Thanks for Brent. Yes, haunted locations, ghost sightings. So I'm making the argument here that these are related phenomena. I'm open to be proven wrong by this. If someone comes up with a better idea of what's going on here, why you get so many similarities between UFO sightings, haunted sightings, cryptid sightings, our experiences around crop circles, even remote viewing. You know, you go back and read some of these early books about remote viewing. This one by Jim Schnabel, Remote Viewers, around Uri Geller, when they invited him to SRI, Stanford Research Institute, as it was called back then, and Lawrence Livermore Labs in the same area.
We were just talking about their latest announcement too on the World Wide Web.
Right, the hot fusion. Now we can get into that if you want.
Yeah.
What's going on with that? But around Uri Geller, they experienced cryptids in their homes. I mean, bird-like cryptids, things that couldn't possibly exist. They experienced little flying UFOs. Weird sort of phenomena that we associated with the paranormal. And I remember reading this back in the 90s. Why in the world would you get that around remote viewing and psychokinesis? They had Uri Geller do some spoon bending and so forth, because it's the same underlying phenomena that we're dealing with in terms of scientific activity. It's got to be the same sort of states of matter. When you reach those states of matter, it's connected to all these other phenomena. And that's personally what I think is going on. I think it's a fifth state of matter. And this is what people ever since Nikola Tesla and even earlier, we forgot about the people before Tesla because of World War I. Unfortunately, there were a lot of casualties and deaths. And even the scientists, they sent everyone to fight in those wars. And a lot of them didn't come back. It disrupted all the research. But people have been looking into these orbs, ball lightning, in the lab, in the field for a long time. And they get the same effects that we get around our cryptids and our crop circles: battery failure, camera failure, sudden changes in temperature, right?
Yep.
Time slips, sudden feelings of fear.
Smell of sulfur.
There are actual reasons why you get sulfur around these phenomena. It's a sign of nucleosynthesis. If you take the oxygen and you synthesize it into a new element, double oxygen is sulfur. And what do you get around these phenomena? The sulfur smell. Now, again, I can't prove that this is what it is, but in general, in science, you want the simplest explanation that explains the most data and evidence, right? It's not that hard to understand. You just don't want to make things more complicated. You want to be like Einstein and say E equals mc squared. Let's just simplify it. right? As Einstein said, simplify it, but no simpler than it needs to be, but just enough to explain as much as you can. And to me, this is sort of like the E equals MC squared behind all these phenomena. I'm not explaining them away. I'm just saying it can't be a coincidence you get these sudden temperature changes. I've spoken to UFO witnesses, and they said I was in Miami in July, and there was this huge disc over the apartment complex, and it just got so cold. All of a sudden, I had to put a jacket on. We know why this happens around coherent matter. When you have particles coming together very coherently, compressing, and then coming apart, they either generate a lot of heat like they would when they're in a orb ball lightning state, but when they come back to reality, our reality, and they're no longer coherent, quantumly coherent, they suck in a lot of heat, and it makes
people describe ball lightning as feeling cool or cold.
It can do both, but that's the interesting thing about it. It's not literally burning, but it does release a lot of energy. It can boil water, and we've been able to calculate exactly how much energy ball lightning is releasing. People have described it going in bathtubs and the water boiling, even 100 years ago. It's not literally giving off heat, but it's giving off energy that the objects around it turn into heat. Yes. Yeah. It's giving off a lot of energy. And so, yes, but that's the cool thing about this, no pun intended. All of these processes happen at room temperature, and ball lightning and orbs can melt metal. Just like we saw with John Hutchinson, the Canadian.
Yeah, I always want to interview him. I always, love his Art Bell interviews. Oh my God,
around.
Yes.
Yeah, he's been talking. There's some interviews with him on the Martin Fleisch Memorial MFM.
I get a hold of him.
No, very interesting fellow, and he said it was all the metal melted at room temperature. It's not like you heated it up to thousands.
I've seen his videos. It's crazy stuff, man. It happens
crazy
in his
stuff.
Crazy lab.
Okay, so this is macroscopic quantum coherent phenomena. It's not the micro quantum that we're all familiar with, particle wave duality. We're talking about something that's happening at the scale that we exist at.
Relic neutrinos, right? They're the biggest of the subatomic particles, probably, right? That could interact with us.
That's the thing. Okay, so you have been reading my book. Thank you. Mm-hmm. This is the thing, and I don't get into this in many interviews. I have to compliment you for even going this far into relic neutrinos. It usually stops just at coherent matter. It's enough, and I get it.
But this is so interesting. What is actually interacting with us on this level?
That is the mind-blowing thing. There's something coming from space right now that we're all interacting with, and you're probably not aware of it. It isn't harmful in the least. It's a type of energy from neutrinos that were created at the Big Bang 13 million years ago, or whatever happened back then. They are 13 billion years old. There's debate if it's a Big Bang or not. But we know at a certain point of time, these relic neutrinos were created, right? They have a wavelength that interacts with human molecules and cells and elements on Earth, and they are a catalytic influence on life. The wavelength that they're at, even though we can't see them and they don't interact electromagnetically, they're what we call bosonic, which means they encourage particles to cooperate and go together. That's what bosons are. It's particles that pair up. Yeah, superconductivity. You kind of see where this is going? Yeah, so it's an element of dark matter. And there is some debate, let's be honest, that people challenge me on this. Does dark matter exist? So I'm just going with what mainstream science says so far, is that there's something called dark matter. And it's the best explanation for why the cosmos looks like it does. It's a gravitationally attractive force. These particles come in from the way out at the edges of the cosmos. 10 million a second are interacting with your body. They do have an influence on biological and chemical and radioactive processes. And Dr. Alexander Parkhomov in Russia showed this very well with his self-built machinery from Soviet surplus equipment, that these neutrinos are gravitationally lensed. They're attracted to other objects, and they flux and lens around the sun, around the moon, that show us that we're interacting with these fluxes of relic neutrinos, and we can show that these biological chemical processes change in a way that they shouldn't be changing. They should be constant, but based on the position of the Earth relative to the sun and the moon and the Milky Way, that these processes are having variation in them based on exposure to relic neutrinos. So the reason this matters is these relic neutrinos actually catalyze all sorts of reactions, including cold fusion and Leonard. So we're actually interacting with dark matter and cosmological processes in a way that no one ever told us.
Like cold fusion comes from dark matter, is what you stipulate in the book.
Yeah, it's a tiny percent of dark matter. I mean, it's a half a percent, 1%, but it doesn't matter. A half or 1% of all the dark matter out there is more than all the stars and galaxies you could see. This is how many relic neutrinos are out there. Even a tiny percentage of all the dark matter. We don't know what the rest of this dark matter is, and maybe we'll find out. It's not all relic neutrinos. But these neutrinos play a role in atomic reactions, nucleosynthesis. And so it's just very interesting that something that's coming from out there in the cosmos could be responsible for creating life on Earth. Maybe that's why we have it, and it continues to exist, because there's another energy source that's pushing reactions to happen. And I'm speculating.
Elemental reactions, too. You know, I mean, everybody thinks that it's all forged in nature, and I mean, this is nature, but that it comes from all this like fusion in the sun, and all these elements come from this. But this could be creating its own separately elements, right? From what I understood,
it's on separate elements, and then that's a very good point, Jason. We've all heard about these solar neutrinos. If you go have any astronomy classes and you just read about this, there are these solar neutrinos. They're always being emitted by the sun. Now, they're very small. They're so small they never interact with us, except every 10 years in lead. A solar neutrino is going to interact with a lead atom. 10 years going through solid lead before it's so small. There are 1 billion solar neutrinos going through your hand every second. I'm not kidding. Talk about ghostly phenomena. We don't experience them because they're so small.
Right.
They don't interact with us.
Most of the subatomic level doesn't react with us.
Doesn't react. They go right through us and Earth. They're irrelevant. They're there, but they don't interact with us. So they're like ghosts that don't really matter to us, and we're ghosts to them. They're so small that we're huge compared to them. We don't exist either. Not so with the relic neutrinos. They have a quantum wavelength that interacts. It's just the right wavelength to interact with cells and molecules, which means it's catalyzing all sorts of biological reactions and creating energetic processes that probably wouldn't exist to the same extent if you didn't have this dark matter we're interacting with. So it means that there are dark matter types of life around too. It just sort of seems to make sense. We're outnumbered by dark matter 10-1. The visible particles we can see around us, 10-1. It would make sense that there are life forms over this millennia that have adapted to this and are able to use this sort of energy to their advantage, because it doesn't end there. The really cool thing about it is many processes in biology and chemistry emit dark matter too on the spot right here. We're creating it. So it's not
neutrinos, right? That's what comes from the
the
Earth's core.
cold neutrinos.
Yeah,
exactly. These relic neutrinos create what's called inverse beta decay, and it produces more neutrinos in the process and electrons being given off, which is favorable to cold fusion and Leonard reactions. Cold fusion, I have to say something about the critics. They were partly right about this. It's not neutrons fusing like in these Lawrence Livermore labs. The news release last week with their they said they generated more energy out than they put in. 192 lasers focused, I think, on this hydrogen atoms. And they heat it up. Right. That is hot fusion. But cold fusion is, much slower neutrinos. And it's created.
It's like a buildup.
Yeah, it builds up and we emit them. And guess what? You've heard of PK, psychokinesis, people bending metals, chi energy.
I was going to say chi. I always talk. I'm a Gnostic, but I believe in a higher power, and what I call my religion is the Force, Star Wars. I believe in a force or will that moves life, creates life.
There seems to be something like that. And it is these cold neutrinos. So why do they matter?
Yeah.
Because they're quantumly coherent. They're all, when you emit them, an inverse beta decay reaction where relic neutrinos come in and you end up getting neutrinos out and electrons. Not neutrons like in a regular beta decay, radioactivity and so forth, but an inverse beta decay. You get neutrinos and electrons coming out. It's another type of radioactive decay. when you emit these cold neutrinos and they're at the same temperature and the same frequency in the same phase, they're clumped together. They're macroscopically coherent. And it's very possible that what we call chi energy, psychokinesis, the things that Uri Geller could do that I've seen demonstrated in Japan when I was teaching over there, are actually people that can control their cold neutrino emissions and organize them, put some intention into them.
Right. Well, consciousness affecting matter in a sense. You know,
right. They can create more quantum matter, which is what psychokinesis is. When you see that spoon just bend all of a sudden, or I've seen this in many examples, Coke bottles being twisted into a liquid and then it becomes solid again. But it's a totally twisted piece of glass, just like Hutchinson's metal samples.
Yes.
I've seen people do levitation where things were levitating. In Japan, I saw this PK practitioner. He was levitating a cigarette, which I thought at the time, there's got to be a string there, right? I mean, it's floating above his hand, and I can't. It's a magic trick, blah, blah. All of a sudden, it's coming across the room like a torpedo at me.
What?
He just looked at me, and he directed this cigarette's coming at me, and it goes into my shirt pocket.
What?
Can you imagine directing from 15 feet away a cigarette into someone's shirt pocket?
And this wasn't David Blaine, right? This was somebody.
This is the real deal.
Wow.
This has to be an important scientific principle that I'm not reading about in
The
science.
Force, man. It's the Force. What I've been dreaming about since I was a little
It's
kid.
real.
Staring
The
at a
Force
ball,
is
trying to make it
real.
move with my mind.
It's real. He was floating.
That is
It's like
awesome.
Yoda was telling Luke
Oh my
Skywalker, you
God.
just have to believe you can do it. The
My
cigarette's
childhood dreams are
floating
true.
above his palm, and I'm thinking, part of me, I'm like anyone else. I'm thinking, am I really seeing this?
Yeah.
And it's floating. All of a sudden, he must have seen my doubt because he looks at me, and the next thing, the cigarette's taking off towards me. Boom, boom, boom. It's coming like this. Makes a right angle turn and goes into the shirt pocket. Right angle turn in the air and shirt pocket, and I still have the cigarette. There's no wires and there's no magnets in it. So this is an example of me. And this guy, we asked him how he did it. He said he trained for years, starting as a kid. He wasn't natural. He had to train himself. It's a type of quantum coherency where it's another state of matter. You're temporarily creating coherent state of matter, which would be influenced by your thought, by the cold neutrino.
I bet George Lucas would have known about that before he invented midi-chlorians for Star Wars. We got somebody on the phone.
Okay,
He's been
go
waiting
ahead.
here, so I want to go ahead and get it. This is my friend Dan. This is the one that was with me when we heard the whole Belgium wave UFO experience from our friend Janot. Hey, Dan.
Hello there. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I hear you, bud.
Hey there, Jason, Jamie, Dr. Hein, everybody. Rob.
Rob's here in spirit.
Yeah, I don't have a screen up in front of me. I'm just kind of audioing right now. But yeah, I wanted to touch on that night. And there's been a couple other nights where you weren't there that maybe because you remember he had to get clearance from.
Yeah, we had to wait to get the story from him. He actually wanted to find out if he had a permission to tell us about this, especially when he found out I had a show.
But I remember it was me and our Quebec friend and him. I don't know if you were there or not when he was talking about how
I was.
He was talking about. I mean, you could tell in his voice he was seeing it again, but how close he was to one of the wings of that triangle and seeing that bright light and then watching it. I don't know if he told you that part of it or not, but I thought that was insane.
Yeah, it had like
He was so close to it.
Yeah,
he said.
I mean, like you said, he could see windows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and his description and size really matched a lot of what our friend, my friend Terry Lovelace, described that he saw in Arkansas, as I thought was really interesting.
And this is an F-15 fighter, by the way. And this guy, we know he's an honored. I mean, he's up there in the elite of pilots for sure. I mean, he's just a good guy.
Yeah, but
you
I
can
see.
tell that body.
I brought that up too, Dan, because I was saying when we met on playing an online Star Wars game. May the Force be with you. I just told you guys I do a show, paranormal, and then you told me about all your experiences, and that opened up us to Jano. It's like why we have to have a show and talk about these things and open it up and not be afraid to talk about it. Because I would have never, if I kept it to myself and just played with you guys, I would have never gotten that great experience.
I mean, it'd be great if Janu and our other buddy could get on their show and just translate the whole thing.
Yeah. But he's in France, so it's really probably early for him.
Oh yeah, he's done by now. But
do you have a question for our guest tonight, Dan? Oh yeah, go ahead.
The other thing, Dr. Hein, I'm hearing what you're saying, and it's a good show tonight. I agree with a lot of that, but I'll try to keep this short. But I was in a workplace shooting it's almost been 2 years ago now. So what happened that day, there was this mysterious guy that, I've been over this millions of times, but he just pretty much popped out of nowhere and deterred me off a path where I probably would have either been dead or even more screwed up than I am. And I remember him touching me on the shoulder, and it was at that moment that something changed. It kind of just slowed down, and then he opened the locked door, and he was telling people what was going on, and they weren't listening until I repeated what he said. And then they looked at me, and they reacted, and then he was gone, just like that. Just poof. I was looking for him, and
saved his life.
Of course, in that time, I didn't know what was going on, but what's happened over these 2 years, you get these repressed memories that come back. And there's a lot of things from that day that I could understand why my brain had blocked it out for me. I say I'm diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety from that. But what's happened is it's brought other memories back, other repressed memories back that I've either forgotten about, put aside, or maybe thought was a dream. Well, Jason, sometimes you feel like, the weird's just kind of following you around in a way.
Yes, for me, yes.
Yeah, it's
But I want to tell you about this triangle experience again, and I know we talked about it a few times, but
all right, you got to kind of make it short because we got anybody else trying to call in.
It's been coming in clear that when the memories hit, you can see it and you can almost relive it. But I'll tell you what I remember from my experience is I was with my ex-wife at the time, and we were both asleep on the couch. And I remember her waking me up in a frantic, and she's like, what the F is going on out here? And, we both kicked open the blinds. And it had to have been a couple miles down the road. You could see these lights, maybe 6 of them, but it almost looked like searchlights, if that makes sense. You could see the triangle cone, I guess. And then the next thing I remember is it just zipped right across. It was rotating the whole time. Now, I was living it was 2 trailers in a kind of off the highway, quite a ways. But it had swung around, and it was slowly rotating, and there had to be another light source behind the trailer illuminating it, but you could see the lights, you could see everything in it and the structure. And it just slowly rotated and banked 90 degrees. And I remember it flying across. We were looking at the blinds. I remember it coming across the window, and I remember us having our faces peeled against the fucking window. I'm sorry, God damn it. Sorry, Jason.
It's all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is hard to talk about, guys. It really is.
No, people.
It's all right.
This is people's experience. It's challenging.
Yeah,
it's challenging.
But when it came by the window, it was so close. It couldn't have been more than 50 feet off, and God, you could see the underside. You could see how it was angled in, I guess. But all you could see was 3 white lights and a reddish purple light.
What state was
and
this?
And then you see the triangle structure. Huh?
What state?
What's that?
Where was this?
Illinois. Or Indiana. I was on the Indiana-Illinois border, right on the borderline.
Not far from me.
Yeah.
It would have been 1998 or it would have been 1998 or 9.
Thank you.
But what's happened is, this thing, and that's where it ended. I'm still missing some time. And then the next thing I know, and it's cold out. I'm standing outside the trailer door. It's cold. I'm looking up and I see it just slowly, it kind of flipped its bottom towards me so you could see it. And I'll tell you what the bottom looked like. It was 3 small lights on each side of the middle part of it, then one in the middle that was a purple-red, I don't know, it was crazy looking, but it was a lot dimmer at this time. It was super dim, and the corner lights had dimmed down to just specks almost, But this thing arced up, and then it started flying straight, which would have been to the west. The west. And it just floated slowly across until it was out of sight through the trees. And you could see the whole bottom. At that time, it was probably about, I don't know, maybe 100 feet up. But it was darker, so you couldn't quite make it out. All you could see were the lights and a little bit of the structure surrounding it.
Was this sighting reported anywhere? I mean, can I read about this sighting from other people, or are you the only one?
I don't know. It's one of them things, and it's weird because after it happened, it just never. I remember it not ever being brought up, and the times I have remembered it, it's been.
Thanks very much.
It's been taken. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. I want to get to this comment from Shell Ashley.
Hey Dan, thank you for sharing tonight, bud.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Thanks a lot, man.
I want to get something here because I saw one of these comments come by, and it wasn't just about hemisync. That I have done.
Oh, the hemisync. Yeah, I was going to try to get to that.
That's a type of coherency from the sound vibration. It's very interesting, the effects. I've done it sometimes. This 0 point energy does seem to have a lot to do with orbs and ball lightning, and this comes out of Soviet research from the same period that Dan's talking about. Late 80s, 90. They figured out how to create these sort of self-sustaining luminous orbs in the absence of any machinery. I mean, it took machinery to get it going. In a circuit, a fractal toroid, a donut, a focused donut shape, but fractal in the sense that it keeps, there's a smaller and smaller loops, and each loop has a smaller loop on it. And Zverblis and Nevesky, 2 Soviet researchers, later Russian researchers, called them electromagnetic phantoms. That is literally what they called it. And the Zverblis actually saw this in apparently a KGB lab, a classified experiment going on. He didn't believe it at first. He thought it was a hoax until he looked at it more carefully. He said when the coils with the electricity going into them in a fractal shape, coil within coil, it looks kind of like a braided, spiral shape around a donut, and a spiral on top of that. Loop. Yeah. He called it an electromagnetic phantom. He said when they turned off the machinery and removed it from the table, the glow still stayed there, just like you would find with ball lightning or orbs. Wow. They had created it in the lab. And the essence of it was, since Shell asked this question, is that it is based on a fractal shape, and they concluded it goes all the way to the 0 point, quantum 0 point, which is where the energy is coming from. It's literally compressing all the particles around it in a fractal form. In other words, instead of expanding outward like we're used to with radio signals and technology that we use that broadcast, this is compressing inward because it's based on a fractal shape. And so the answer to her question, Dan's stuff is really interesting, but I just saw this come up as he was talking, and I wanted to answer it. Yes, it seems that these certain types of shapes can create a non-ordinary electromagnetic structure, what some people have called a diality inversion. In other words, not 90 degrees between magnetic and electrical structure, the way Maxwell talked about it, which is what it normally is in the technology we use, is 90-degree angles between magnetism and electricity and electromagnetism. These are non-ordinary angles that serve to compress particles, create charge clusters. And they said in their words, Nevesky's article, I've read this very carefully because the MFMP people translated it from Russian very recently, that it creates a connection to the 0 point field. So since Shell asked that,
Right.
thank you, Shell, you win the prize here, because that's exactly what the Soviet researchers concluded. I know we've all heard this and it sounds like metaphysics. This is what they said physically is happening to create orbs, self-sustaining luminous objects. They said that object would stay on the table for 2 days after you removed the machinery and turned off the electricity. A glowing donut shape. And this is the way ball lightning sometimes appears as a toroid. It doesn't always appear as a ball. I've read accounts where people woke up and saw one on the bed next to them, a glowing donut. How about if you woke up? These ball lightnings can show up in very many ways. But here's the point. And since Shell brought this up, it's important. It's not just something you see in thunderstorms and out in nature. It can be created in a lab, and Hutchinson was able to do it at a
tectonic movement.
Yeah, tectonic plates, any sort of compression. So this is actually the secret to this cold fusion LENR, is that researchers that looked into this concluded that what cold fusion LENR reactions are, not the hot fusion that we saw at LIV, but naturally happening, is actually a type of micro ball lightning. When you have micro ball lightning that is very small, you probably can't see it with the naked eye. You need a microscope or electron microscope. It, with the help of these relic neutrinos that you brought up a few minutes ago, it can form a self-sustaining reaction, ball lightning. In other words, ball lightning and cold fusion LENR are the same thing. It's a type of electrogravitic collapse. So whether you want to look at it the way the Soviets looked at it or the way our
affects gravity. It affects gravity.
Exactly. And this is why it's been classified. And you go back to the 1950s, Jason, and all the research in ball lightning and peaceful uses of atomic energy are all funded by the U.S. Air Force. And if you read the documents to this day, even their ball lightning studies that recently, they're redacted in half of the documents. It's whited out the way Stan Friedman used to joke that they don't use a big marker anymore to block it out. It's white out. And why would you do that with ball lightning research? Because it has anti-gravitic applications. In other words,
once you go down that rabbit hole, you're going to get right to very secret projects that are using this for anti-gravity.
This is part of the reason, folks, that we haven't had a national discussion on any of this.
The Air Force is really quiet on the national discussion on this.
Really quiet. They're not participating in any of this discussion that we've heard from the Navy. With UFO subject. But this goes back to the 50s with anti-gravitic research. And even Martin Fleischmann at the University of Utah, Fleischmann and Pons, cold fusion, as it was called back then, he says in his interview with Martin Tinsley, Infinite Energy magazine, you can see the citation in Dark Matter Monsters, we were also working on anti-gravity.
Yeah.
Says it right
hand
there.
in hand.
Guys, this is what's going on. They've been dumbing us down because I don't think they're necessarily bad people. I feel like this has a national security implication. And they would rather not have our adversaries get access to this technology at the cost of us not having any intelligent discussion on it, because it's classified. And so we don't talk about this. We have no idea. And yet people experience ball lightning all the time. I mean, it's not all that.
It's something. If it's something in nature, this is why remote viewing is natural to humans. They kept that, try to keep that quiet. This is something in nature too, and it can be discovered just like the nuclear bomb.
Look, okay, guys, this is how serious
it's out there. Yeah,
I haven't talked about this on any interview yet, but I'm gonna say it right now. I mean, the Department of Energy bought a Ukrainian cold fusion company that had been Proton 21. Look it up. They said if you looked at their articles, you can only find it on the Wayback Machine because it went deep black. They bought all the scientists and they moved them first to Argonne Labs in Illinois. And then where else do you go to that? Oak Ridge in Tennessee, home to the Manhattan Project, right? They bought a Ukrainian cold fusion LENR company that said they were working in all this stuff that we're talking about. They said it was a type of compression, and eventually more energy is going to be coming at natural, not with lasers and all this, just a natural type of compression. Created anti-gravity. And what's also in their discussion about this dark matter. They said that their experiments created dark matter. And they said it was the most shocking thing they had ever discovered. They said you could shoot a bullet at this material and it would do nothing to it. The dark matter would literally absorb all of the elements of the bullet with no destructive effects to this material that they were working with. And then all of a sudden, the last we heard from them is 2019. You look them up, gone off the internet.
Yep.
Whoop, and you find out who bought them, Department of Energy.
Of course.
So they know about this. They're trying to keep it out, and maybe they have motives that, I mean, look, you and I don't work in national security. They may know things that we don't know, and you talk to them and say, look, guys, it's vital that we keep this secret, but I'm not sure I buy it. I think that they may not want the whole energy infrastructure of
That's
our
what I think.
planet changing, because you don't need oil anymore. You don't need fossil
This
fuels.
economy runs off the petrodollar.
It
would change all that.
It would change all of that. But why not? Why not change it? I mean, it's not working that well that right now, you know.
Right.
I mean, the whole system's looking pretty creaky. We've got this old electrical grid. What the heck's going on here? We have this electrical grid that's 100 years old. You talk to people and say utility companies are not putting energy, and yet you got companies like Proton 21 20 years ago saying we developed a new energy source. It's natural. It's how nature works. It's what everything we've been talking about tonight creates compressed particles. There's different ways of creating the compression. They had their own way of doing it.
Yeah.
But they said it creates another state of matter, which creates dark matter. And even they were surprised. It's so funny to read this article. They say the average physicist would just be shocked by that this is real. And if you don't think it's real, why would the Department of Energy buy them and ship them out to Oak Ridge? 100 scientists were working in this project. It was a whole building. It's disappeared from Ukraine before the conflict, the current conflict with Russia. It's prior to that. They were working on it. So it's
how many other countries were trying to get them? You know what I'm saying? Like,
that would be maybe what they would, maybe Jason, you're right. If we talk, let's hypothetically imagine some of these DOA officials are here. They would say, Jason, do you want the Russians buying this company? Do you want the Chinese to get this before we do? That's what they would say. You're absolutely right. But the nuts and bolts of this are, if anybody thinks that what we're talking about here tonight is metaphysics or fringe science,
it really has been. It's been around a long time, people.
It's being bought and put into deep black projects. And what bothers me about this is exactly what Hal Puthoff said at the 2018 meeting in Vegas, SSE IRVA, Remote Viewing Association.
Yeah,
the SSE, Society for Scientific Exploration, founded by Peter Sturrock and Jacques Vallée and others to study UFOs without stigma. This is why they said they started the SSE, and I'm a member. And I've been presenting to him for a long time. Hal Puthoff said he was concerned that we would have a Sputnik moment where some other country would develop this technology before we did, and you look up in the sky and there's Sputnik and you don't have it, and the Russians do. Don't tell them anything as the satellite comes over. It's listening. So I think this fear that we still have of the Cold War and the Soviets getting ahead of us, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We've classified so much research that we don't even, I mean, we're piecing it out on this show right now from my and other researchers, very long periods of research into these topics so that we can talk about this. But it's just you and me right now. Don't you get it? It's you and me in the audience. We're and other podcasts, but it's really not a national effort. It's really been suppressed. It's grassroots, Jason. But at least we're having some conversation. We're not going to be arrested for having this conversation. This isn't the time of the Vatican and the Galileo where you could be
Giordano Bruno getting burned at the stake for it.
Burned at the stake or put under house arrest.
Reputations can get. We got somebody waiting on the phone line. I want to get to before we go to our next commercial break.
Thanks for listening.
Sorry for your wait. Who do we got on the line?
Hi, Jason. It's Azariana.
Hey, Azariana.
How are you tonight?
Doing good. Thanks for calling in.
Hey. Good. I wanted to. He said something interesting a while back.
Really quick. Make sure you turn us off in the background. I hear echoing in the background.
Oh, I thought I did.
Just make sure, because I heard echoing. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I have you on speaker, so maybe that's it also. Okay. Anyway, I wanted to say something about what he had mentioned before about the big triangle, black triangle in the sky. And I had seen that in the 80s. and there was 3. I mean, it clouded. It made covered the moon and the stars and stuff. It was so big, and there were 3 smaller, like I would say, orbs or ships. Maybe they were different colors,
but they were orb shaped.
They were they were floating first, and they were doing all kinds of, some were going fast, then they would stop, then they would just like hover. And then this, like I said, you could see actually this big black thing cover the, the moon and the stars and stuff, the sky at night. And all those 3 lights that I saw, they had, I forget the different colors that they had, but they all went into the different points of this big black triangle. And then this triangle hovered with those lights blinking. And and we were watching, it was a summer night, I know that. And we were kind of like paralyzed just watching it, And we had called, I think, I forget who we called, but it wasn't just us that called. I mean, the whole county called. And
police station?
And, and the TV news had it on the next day saying, oh, it wasn't anything. It was just, maybe a meteor shower or something, they flubbed it off,
What are their usual explanations?
Right. But it was, the airport was nearby, and the airport had lost its power. Not everybody else, but just the airport had lost all its lights. And they couldn't explain that. They said, oh, well, maybe, someone touched
nothing to
the
see here,
button
move
or
along.
something like that. Yeah, nothing to see, And I mean, like I said, it wasn't just me and the group I was with. It was a whole bunch of other people,
right.
And it, like I said, it was huge. I couldn't even imagine the size of it, But it definitely interests me when he mentioned that,
Where is this? Can the caller tell us where this happened?
Well, I'm in Connecticut.
Oh,
okay. And that's where you saw it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. What year?
Yeah. So it was in the 80s.
Yeah, okay, that was a big time for triangles in Connecticut, Westchester County, Rockland County. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's weird, like how these happen in waves, like the Belgian wave, and it happens in waves in certain places that people see these.
How do stories like this not make the news? I don't get it.
Yeah, she said it did in her local, right? Is there? You said it did make it into your local news.
It was in the local news. It was in our local paper.
Yeah, local.
They said, oh, they couldn't explain it. It had to be something,
But not the mainstream media, no.
Well, yeah, no, it was in the local.
Guys,
yeah, never hit the mainstream,
Papers. Doesn't. Yeah. We're having this discussion about UFOs, UAP in Congress right now. Have they ever brought this up? No.
No, they gave us the crappiest evidence they had.
Yeah, we got these little things, the dock. I mean, Nimitz, it's fascinating. But what about thousands of people seeing this in Connecticut?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Zariana, thank you for calling in and sharing.
Well, thank you very much, and everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye. And
Bye-bye.
and again, another power outage when it's seen. There
you go.
Common phenomenon.
It's just, do we even know our own history?
No.
Of our
that's what I'm saying. That's what frustrates me is in history and archaeology how much we've ignored and covered.
I think what the caller saw was weather balloons.
Swamp gas, my opinion. Swamp
ice
gas.
Crystals. Ice crystals reflecting off the light of Venus.
Oh my God. No, that's the thing. And, I remember, like I said, I had a shadow person experience that really changed me. Really, why I do this show is because I felt like I was losing my mind. The scene was terrifying.
Yeah.
It tormented me for months. Me and another two friends. And I'm not going to get into that whole story, but the reason I do this show is because I felt I had no one to talk to. The only thing that kept me sane was that two other people were going through it at the same time. I couldn't imagine if I had gone through it alone. That I do this to give people an opportunity to speak about these kind of things, anything, be it any kind of paranormal encounter, because it's hard to tell people what you're going through or what you're experiencing. We're not going to figure this out until we start comparing notes on what's happening.
Yeah, no, it is true. I find this fascinating, and I love this when callers call in and we're learning about new stories, and it makes the local papers. It dies down. And then finally, the New York Times has a story in 2017. Did they mention the triangles that were seen over the Hudson Valley by thousands and thousands of people for years and years from New Jersey? Yes, Blues Cruise. I am from Westchester, so I know Rockland, Westchester County, over Indian Point. The guards were about to fire at it. It's 30 feet over one of the reactors. That's the atomic power plant on the Hudson. And so I just want to say one thing to Shell. Thank you, Jamie, for putting up the reference. Shell, if you want to learn more about this, look, I have a big sense of reference section in Dark Matter Monsters with all the references and footnotes. If you want to learn more about this and the researchers and where you can read more about this, it's on the MFMP channel. They have a lot of this research, so you can read it on your own. But I think Dark Matter Monsters is a good focusing point for a lot of this research, but you need to expand and do not stop digging. It's there. I have seen it all with my eyes in the process of writing this book, and there's so much information, but you're not going to get it from the ordinary channels. They're going to find it on podcasts like this. But once you find something interesting, please do me a favor, keep digging. It's there because this has been discovered over and over again since Nikola Tesla.
But a lot of people get into one area, like, I'm a ghost hunter, or I am into UFOs, or I'm a Bigfoot. But you start getting into these areas, and they start leading you to the others because there's a connection we haven't put together yet.
I remember going to some of these UFO conferences, and they said, "Well, we don't want other subjects, or we just want UFOs."
Right?
Structure. Well, I'm sorry, your UFOs sometimes appear as orbs. Sometimes you can't even see them. I'm sorry, it just leads to people have ghost experiences around the UFOs. Then Dogman shows up, and now they're getting
shadow people and aliens.
Yeah, that's what I was just. Thank you, Jamie. I was going to bring up is that now doing this show for 7 years, I've had a number of abductees on, like Terry Lovelace, who they don't talk about. They'll talk about what happened with the abduction experience, but they don't talk about things that are happening in their life that are like psychokinetic activity or seeing shadow people, because it's already hard enough. They got to talk about being abducted by aliens. Let's not throw anything else in there.
This happens to people that just have experienced balls of light on the road. I know people that they're just driving and there's an orb, and it goes through the car or something. All of a sudden, they have the shadow people showing up in the homes. They have things going through the walls because you've entered another dimension. I almost wanted to say the Twilight
Zone.
You've entered. Okay, one thing we haven't talked about tonight.
Entered the Twilight Zone.
We don't have to talk about, but there is good science behind parallel reality.
I'm a big fan of it.
It started way back when, the 50s. Hugh Everett III at Princeton proposes the many worlds idea. They didn't call it back then. They called it relative states. Like there were other states than the one we're seeing right now in the same space, but other versions of it.
Yeah.
And this really does seem to be what people are experiencing, because you experience one thing. Like, how about the people that experience Bigfoot and then they go home even far away and they start experiencing other phenomena around their home, lights burning out all of a sudden, things not working properly, strange sounds. Is it the hitchhiker effect, Jason? Or have they switched their frequency and they're now perceiving a different aspect?
Reality. Or is it something connecting to them? I've talked about this a lot on my show. I have a big theory.
It's a good discussion. I don't have the final say. You don't. None of us do. But
none of us do.
I just have questions. Something following you. I'm open to that. I know people who believe that. Or did you go to another parallel path with different entities living there, and now you see them wherever you go because they've always been there.
I don't know.
You didn't see them before. I'm just offering
I don't know,
that
but they're just two possible scenarios of what's going on here. We got to go to commercial break here in a minute, but there's something you
Great
talk
stuff,
about
Great stuff.
you talk about Skinwalker Ranch in the book.
Yeah.
And I think one look at what our government's got involved in that. If they don't take this seriously, come on, why are they going to spend? Yeah. Why would they be interested in that if they're not taking this subject matter seriously, right? So I've talked about this on the show with a lot of different guests. I have not a theory, but something I've noticed between experiences. So are you familiar with the Bell Witch story?
No. Refresh
okay,
my memory.
so they've made a movie out of it before. I'm getting some echoing. Hopefully, I don't know. Sometimes it goes away. They've made a movie out of it. It goes back to the late 1800s in Kentucky, right? Kentucky, or is it Tennessee? I can't remember. God, my brain's going crap right now. But the Bell Witch story is a phenomenon that happened on a farm with a family that experienced a lot of psychokinetic activity in the story of it spread. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation or a lot of stories made up, I'm sure. I mean, there's even Andrew Jackson supposedly experienced this, but that's probably not true. There's now Bell Witch Cave there, but this is a whole phenomenon where this thing would speak to them. It would apport objects. It would terrorize the one girl in the family quite a bit. It's one of the earliest, I think, written experiences in America of a psychokinetic event happening with a family I mean, they felt it was a curse from the Bell Witch. The woman who was named Bell that lived on the farm. But everything you see in the accounts and the stories, what was going on, it was something psychokinetic. It was very similar to the ideas of like the entity case. I'm friends with Barry Taff. I've had him on the show to talk about these, or the San Pedro case he was involved with. These cases where they center around somebody in psychokinetic activity, balls of lights, all these scenes happening. What I connected from that, okay, and I got to go to commercial break here. We can talk about it afterwards. Both the Bell Witch story and the Skinwalker Ranch story start out the same way. I noticed.
Right. Yes.
The father and son in the Bell Witch story are out in the field, and they encounter a strange beast out in the field. After that point, all these strange occurrences start happening in their home. I mean, this thing speaks to them eventually. Everybody witnesses to hearing its voice.
Yeah.
And then you get Skinwalker Ranch. Again, a father and son out in the field and see a beast in the field.
Oh, man, and multiple beasts. And Marley Woods in Missouri.
Yeah, there's other accounts. These are the two most famous I think of. I've got to go to commercial break. When we come back, I ask you about what
Albert County here in Colorado, they had the same. In the Skinwalkers of the Pentagon, they said it was even stranger than Skinwalker Ranch was this Albert County Ranch. Things. Anyway, you got it. It's all of these show up. All of it shows.
Right. I want to get to my, I guess, kind of theory on this a little bit when we come back.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
We'll get back because we've got like a half an hour left. So I want to talk about this. We're going to go to commercial break, guys. When we come back, phone lines will still be open if you want to call in, join this discussion. Loving the show tonight. We'll be right back.
Intercepted transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated. I will hear it.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDeath.net.
This is an APAC studio presentation.
I'm Barry, owner-operator of Barry's Barometer Barn. Lately, I bet you've been lying awake at night asking yourself, how many barometers do I really need? Well, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we think you need more than one. Otherwise, we're gonna go out of business. Remember, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we don't know the meaning of high-pressure sales. Come on, folks, buy another barometer. I'm trying to put my kids through college, I've got a family to support, and a secret mistress who isn't cheap.
Visit Barry's Barometer Barn, 000 Storm Drive. Come on, folks, buy a barometer. I'm Barry's older brother, Larry, and every time one of you people walk past the store without coming in, Barry beats me.
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, he has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it, but to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all, but he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now. Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the dreamscape.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You could accept the fact that this city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
Left on the house at 8%. So they're okay. So, does anybody want to play Parcheesi? Okay, who brought the dog?
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419. Or by Skype caller ID OOJBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is Dr. Simeon Hein. We are talking about his excellent book, Dark Matter Monsters, Cryptids, Ball Lightning, and the Science of Secret Life Forms. This is a book after my own heart. This is all this stuff. I am not a a very, scientific mind or whatever. I have an imagination that goes wild, and I read books about scientific stuff like this, and my brain goes wild with the possibilities. I'm a bit imaginative, I know. And so we're going to get into I want to shoot past in my theory. I know run past you guys about what we might be encountering some of these phenomenon. But you guys can join this discussion. Phone lines are now open. Call back into the show if you want, or call in if it's your first time. Whatever. Join the conversation. We only got a half hour left, so let's go ahead and get right back into it. All right. So I've had Dr. Barry Taff on. He has a great book, As Above, So Below. Kind of his way of like connecting paranormal activity, psychokinetic activity, and UFOs, and his experiences, working at UCLA, when he worked with like remote viewing and other projects, worked on the entity case. And your book comes really close up to what he talked a lot about. I don't know if you've ever read it, but I thought about his book. It's been years since I read it. A lot of the similar ideas. He had a lot of perception on like psychokinetic activity and how people are affected by EMF and certain frequencies, and how it's two things when people are having these paranormal encounters. It's the environment and the person. I stipulated that I feel, maybe because of my shadow person experience, that there is a third part to this, an entity part, a consciousness entity, okay? And I've thought about it over years because of my shadow person experience. And when I was bringing up the Bell Witch case and the Skinwalker Ranch and other cases that start out with this beast in the field that's seen by people, and then all this stuff starts happening.
Yeah.
If there is some parallel universe to ours, or some other field around us, or entities living us that we can't see, that are in some way parasitic to our energy. They feed off our energy, either be it good energy from us, like happy feelings, or negative fear energy. If it's fear energy, and this has been around us since the beginning of time, since the beginning of human civilization, or primitive man. Let's go to primitive man. And it's been interacting with us, and it wants fear. What better way, especially we go back to the most primitive times of man, what man's going to fear is the beast in the field. And maybe these interactions start out this way because this is what its go-to is. It's a conscious entity that wants one thing, our fear maybe, or some kind of, or succubus wants sexual energy. But it reacts to us the way we would perceive what we are our inner fear, like it in Stephen King being a clown. It's not really a clown; it's like a big spider or something interdimensional, or whatever. But it portrays itself as a clown to get the fear from the children before he eats them. I've always wondered if there is some kind. A lot of the paranormal, like demons and psychokinetic activity happens, and all these things that happen is something. Because, like you said, sometimes somebody has an encounter with Bigfoot, and then they go home, and then they have psychokinetic activity, aports and balls of light. Did it change the person, or is there now something that is attached to them that is feeding off of their reactions to it?
No, I think it's a good question. I'm more inclined to go with the idea that these are reflections of our own energy field, just amplified, that it has something to do with us. I don't think it's external to us, that it's feeding off us any more than Uri Geller was feeding off the researchers at Lawrence Livermore Labs. I think it's a multi-dimensional effect in the way, Shell again in the comments here is asking whether it's like a Mandela effect, multiverse. She mentions parallel realities.
Right.
I think it's the simplest explanation. I don't think parallel realities make things more complicated. I think it makes it simpler. It just means that there is no collapse of the wave function. There's no disappearing worlds. Like
that all possibilities exist.
Yeah, that's what Schrödinger wave function tells us, is that groups of particles have huge numbers of possibilities, but they're only expressed in a kind of a fraction of that when we experience reality. Now, one interpretation of that has been that something about the wave function collapses when we observe it. But that's a very
by our consciousness.
Right. Well, we all were taught that, but that is an old 100-year-old idea that is just superstition, and no one has ever seen a wave function collapse. It's metaphysics. Those physicists, as brilliant as they were that invented quantum mechanics, were also philosophers, but being a good physicist doesn't necessarily make you a good philosopher any more than me being good at these subjects makes me necessarily an expert in something else. They were just suggesting this because no one could quite understand, if you have all these possibilities from the Schrodinger wave function, how do you end up with the reality we see around us? It's called the preferred basis problem. Why do we see it the way it is if it's supposed to be all possibilities, all colors and temperatures and interactions, and we only see this version of it? Well, one idea, just like you're saying, Jason, was that there's some sort of wave function collapse, our consciousness collapses. But that is pure philosophy. There's no evidence for that. No one's ever seen a wave function collapse. A lot of people didn't buy into it, including Einstein. And Schrodinger himself did not buy that there was any collapse of the wave function. There's no logic behind it.
It's just our observation of what we're seeing, that we're missing a component to it.
We're missing a component. Exactly right. So where are the other components that are missing? So one idea was that they just disappear when you observe anything, and human consciousness collapses reality. We've all heard this.
It's like making yourself the center of the universe.
It makes you the center of everything. And a lot of people, Schrodinger, Einstein, and a whole bunch of others, were not happy with this idea that somehow the universe is a construct of human awareness. It's too anthropocentric. It's not scientific. It doesn't fit with anything we really know about reality. That it only exists when we're here, and it totally disappears. But that's
does a tree fall in the forest? Does hear a tree, or does a tree make a sound falling in the forest? Nobody's there to observe
That's the Copenhagen interpretation. And a lot of people were not satisfied that, including Hugh Everett III at Princeton, who writes this dissertation with an alternative idea. His idea is that there's many versions of us, you and me, in many different realities, and we're only perceiving one at a time. That we're the ones that are moving through space-time, seeing all these slices and all these possibilities of reality, and that all the other versions exist. And in some other reality, I'm the host of the show and I'm interviewing you, and I'm wearing your red shirt and you're wearing my green vest. Or sorry, I don't know what your name is, but you and I have switched genders.
Jamie.
And, what was it?
Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie. So that's what parallel reality suggests. Now, this is actually what I believe is true. And you can get there from different ways. You don't even need quantum mechanics to get to parallel realities. There are other interpretations of it that other physicists have come up with, where you don't even need a wave function at all. It's just it's an interference effect of parallel realities that creates quantum mechanics to begin with. And that's called the many worlds interpretation, actually. Many interacting worlds, excuse me. It's many interacting
worlds,
Yeah, and Everett's many worlds interpretation. There are different variations of this, and I'm not going to try to argue which one's correct. And there's here, but I personally believe that there's data to support the idea of parallel realities. A lot of people say, well, this is not falsifiable, doesn't fall in the range of science. And how does it get back to Jason's question here, which is, what's affecting what? The beast, you see it in the field, all of a sudden you get poltergeist in the home, then you get orbs, then things are floating around. We know what this is. Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, James Lukatsky and Keller and Knapp do an excellent job showing the government's interest in this and how this scared the bejesus out of battle-hardened analysts that showed up there who were used to working on the battlefield. All of a sudden, and they were frightened by this. Many of them insisted that guards sleep outside their room at night, and then they go home back to the Maryland suburbs and they see Dogman. And the kids see Dogman, and the kids' friends start seeing Dogman. So Lukatsky describes this as a contagion. It's like a medical virus. It's like a virus. I understand that threat agencies can see anything as a threat, and I don't blame Lukatsky for interpreting this as a virus. But I don't think that's at all what's going on. My interpretation is much more like in the direction of Everett or the other interpretations of Everett, which is not based on any quantum wave function at all, which is what Shell is saying, who's been commenting all night earlier, that these are actually parallel realities that are bleeding through to our reality.
Right.
And that they're sort of there all the time and sort of not there. but sometimes something changes and the frequencies are right, that their frequency goes, connects with yours, and you start seeing them the way you start seeing a new musical group that you never heard about before. All of a sudden you're listening to them, you get the vibe, other people start listening, you're whistling it around, and look how music spreads, how groups get popular.
Musician, yeah.
I think this is much closer to what's going on. I'm just
I got a phone call too we should get to here before we run out of time.
So this is what I think is bleed through from parallel realities. And I think this is once you start seeing these other realities, you will see them when you go home. It doesn't mean that they're stalking you. Something changed in you that allowed your cymatics, the frequencies creating patterns and saying, you have changed. You don't notice you've changed. Now,
and that's why maybe I've seen so much stuff since my early childhood of seeing the green floating head.
It's a cumulative effect.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be afraid of it. No, what's the evidence? And we can talk about this more if you want. Multiple personality disorder, which is now called dissociative identity disorder.
Yes, I've talked about this on the show.
I have talked to psychiatrists and psychologists that have worked in hospitals who've seen this with their own eyes. They tell me it's paranormal spooky to see a patient come out with one personality and one set of illnesses. And they go back in their room and they come out in 10 minutes. It's a different personality with a different set of illnesses. Their temperature has changed. The pneumonia they had a few minutes ago is gone. They have allergies to something that how in the world can you explain that from any conventional medical model? That shows that the same individual is traveling these parallel paths and they're switching away.
Okay. Oh God.
That is what I think is the evidence for parallel. I'm so tired of hearing this idea. Well, it's philosophy, not falsifiable. Well, then how do you explain dissociative identity disorder with these diseases that pop up and disappear? If that has a biomedical explanation, how does it disappear instantly?
Right.
When the other personality shows up.
The mind is just that powerful. I agree the mind is. But there's something here. Wait, let's get this phone call really quick. Who do we got on the line?
It's Joanne.
Hey, Joanne.
How you doing, Jason?
Doing good. Thanks for calling in. You there?
I was calling in to see and talk to Dr. Hein if he had heard about the article with David Paulides and him being on Coast to Coast last week, and what he had came to the conclusion as to what was happening to all the missing 411 people.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I've listened to a lot of David Paulides.
Me too.
Did you have any other comments about that before I answer? Because I've listened to a lot of David Paulides, and I'm not sure I agree with everything he's saying in terms of entities or so forth, harvesting people. That's certainly one possibility. I think there's another possibility along the lines of spontaneous combustion as an analogy, that people are popping into other realities. Because you can read accounts of this, of people who've gone to other times. I know friends who've gone to restaurants that did not exist. They went back the next morning and it hadn't been open for 20 years. Groups of friends. You can read accounts from time slips.
Yeah.
And if this is happening, I'm not diminishing any of what I've looked into some of these cases as I've gone through some of these towns out west and inquired about what happened to some of these people. And we don't totally know. And I don't think we can totally discount that cryptids might be involved in some way or not, or as his latest documentary about UFO connection. I haven't seen it yet. I mean, Terry Lovelace could have been taken away forever. So these are possibilities.
He saw other people on the ship when he was taken.
He saw other people on the ship, and he told me he was very concerned for them. They looked extremely frightened. So I don't know if there's one explanation, but I just want to suggest the possibility that people could spontaneously have a time slip and not come back. And maybe I don't want to belittle this at all. Some of these cases are extremely perplexing and seem tragic. But I just think that needs to be one of the possibilities there also, in addition to whatever else could be and probably is doing this also. It's something that really, I think we do need to start looking at the data. It would be really helpful if places like Yosemite and other national parks created a data set for him to look at instead of wanting to charge millions of dollars for them to compile it.
Oh my God, yeah.
I'm as curious as anyone.
yeah, no,
What possibilities too. I'm not sure
yeah,
it's
no,
necessarily he's doing all of it.
Yeah. When he was talking to George Norrie, he talked about how he started, like the best way that I can describe it, because he had put it in his, when he was talking to George, he had put it in basically like connecting the dots. How he was getting UFO, not him so much,
Yeah.
but he started correlating UFO sightings, and then started correlating missing people that came up in that area.
And this also fits our
And-
argument tonight that where you get one paranormal phenomenon, you get others. You're going to get more time slips happening in those places too.
What if it's backwash from the ships? You know, their
Right.
propulsion mechanism is creating cracks in time. You know, I remember in
Correction.
Star Trek.
I just think there are multiple. Exactly, Jason. I think there's multiple. I think we need to look at all the possibilities of what's happening here, including deliberate abductions. It's a good question from the caller.
Joanne, I got to let you go because we're almost at the end of the show.
It's a
But
very
thank
good
you for
question,
calling in.
and I would like more research into this from all of the authorities that have anything to do with this to reveal the data, so we can start having an intelligent conversation about what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. He was very, very hesitant with.
He doesn't want to make. He's a very
conclusions.
data kind of guy. He doesn't like to theorize a lot, but yeah, I have to.
But he
I'll
said
have to hear
overall
interview.
that there's something's harvesting humans from the planet going back hundreds of years. This is
that's
sort of
possible.
Oh yeah.
he's
One
raising
of
it as a
the guys
possibility. So, I
that-
mean, I'm just saying it's a
Oh
possibility.
yeah.
And,
Well, what was
yeah.
what was interesting is that he had a guy on at the same time who had been taken. Excuse me.
Well, people have. I mean, look,
and
Terry,
he had.
Terry Lovelace is talking about this.
I don't remember if it was him that he had on the show with him.
No, probably wasn't.
No,
I mean, this
no.
happens. When people are listen. Terry is the one who said to me, and I put it in Dark Matter Monsters, and Terry told me to put it in there. Is that he got a call from the Department of Homeland Security, and they said they were investigating these abductions as a type of criminal activity.
Okay.
Even though they haven't identified the source necessarily, they are taking it seriously.
But it would be criminal. All right, I got to let you go, Joanne. Thank you for
Yeah.
calling in. You have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
All right, bye.
Bye bye.
I've always been fascinated by time slips. Like when my was growing up, my favorite shows were Quantum Leap and Sliders. You know,
Quantum Leap, wasn't that? It was a good video game too. Is that where it came from?
No, I don't even know about a video game. No, I just know Quantum Leap, Scott Bakula. You know, jumping into other people's bodies, and then the same creators made Sliders, where they go to different parallel universes.
I think we're moving through parallel universes every second, but
That's what I think.
It's so much like the previous reality a second ago. You
Right.
don't notice a change.
Yes.
This is because our consciousness, just like it's not good at dealing with these paranormal phenomena and forgets about it, I think just between the time we started the show and now, we've gone through many parallel realities.
Yes.
But it's so slow.
So minute.
It's so minutely different from frame to frame. But we can tell we're all slightly different than when the show started because we've had a very interesting discussion. We've had good comments from listeners, and it's been very interesting. So we're all slightly different. We could all admit that. We've learned something tonight, or I hope you've learned something. I've learned something. Those are parallel realities, but those are micro parallel realities. They're just slight changes so that in the time we've started this, my beard's grown a little bit. Everything's changed a little bit. Those are parallel realities. But they're so similar that we don't call them parallel. We think of parallel realities like science fiction, the cryptid world and a whole other different worlds and time slips. But time slips are happening, in my view, every second. That's what time is. It's a slip. It's when it jumps, like Jason's talking about these shows. When it's a big jump, then you notice it and you go, "Whoa! I ended up in parallel reality." But people experience this. I know people who've experienced this. and have good stories of people who encountered things that they went back later to that same place where somebody helped them in a snowstorm, or they went back to a restaurant. It is not there.
Or my friend Dan, a person that helped save his life during an active shooter incident that nobody else could see but him. Some people say it was a ghost, but he was physically there, opened a locked door he shouldn't have been able to open.
Wow.
Maybe he's from another reality that interacted with him at that time.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I would not. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Well, that's what, people, we talk about the Mandela effect, and a lot of it is bad memory, a lot of it is bad memory, but what if it is because we are all shifting to different parallel universes every second?
If you want to look at it from a symmetrical point of view, and the universe tends to like symmetry, and this is the basics of physics, is that, every effect has an anti-effect,
Yeah.
Every motion has a counteractive force. We all understand that the future has many possibilities. What's going to happen a minute from now, an hour from now?
Future's always in motion.
Why isn't the past in motion too? It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to remember that other timeline. And I know that seems too confusing to the human mind.
Makes the brain hurt.
What's that?
Makes the brain hurt, as my wife would say when I talk about this stuff.
You don't like it. Your mind doesn't want that. It likes this consistency. A linear idea, but that doesn't mean it works that way just because your mind prefers it. I mean, our minds prefer the languages we grew up with and the types of sounds we grew up with because it's most familiar with that. It's a type of bias. And we know what this type of bias is. It's a type of familiarity bias to prefer things that were like the way you were when you were a kid. And it creates things like prejudice and racism and things where we don't feel as comfortable with things that are different from what we grew up around. I feel the same thing applies to these time slips, Jason, and this sense of parallel reality. If you think about it too much, it seems overwhelming. But that doesn't mean it's not that way. People used to believe that the Earth was the center of the universe because that's what Aristotle said. And wasn't that simpler than believing we're surrounded by bazillions of exoplanets and galaxies? Even Einstein, at that time, there was no other galaxy known outside the Milky Way at the time Einstein created his theory. All they knew about was the Milky Way. They hadn't seen far enough to know that there are billions and billions of other galaxies, okay? Well, just because people preferred the Ptolemaic view, that the Earth-centric view, didn't mean that the heliocentric view didn't do a better job explaining the data. And did anyone want to change? No. It took a long...
People at the stake for it.
People got burned at the stake. There used to be bloodletting.
Yeah.
Doctors, until very recently, all they knew how to do was bloodletting. There is no evidence, except unless you have excessive iron, that bloodletting is going to do anything good for you. It just killed a lot of people, including George Washington. That doesn't mean that doctors weren't practicing it for hundreds of years past the time where the evidence showed that there was a germ theory of illness. The invention of the microscope, Llewellyn Hoke and others. They didn't accept that for at least 150 years, even though you could see bacteria.
Like I said, it takes a while for these things, the truth to prevail.
So this is the take-home message, is the truth may not be what you're most comfortable with, but that doesn't mean it's not what's really going on. It just means you would prefer to go back into the comfort zone of the Earth being the center of the universe because Aristotle said so, and I don't want to think about anything else. And that's the way we were for thousands of years. I mean, it takes a lot to change. And I respect everyone who's participating in this tonight, Jason, because it takes a lot to reevaluate your reality. As we were saying in the beginning of the show, I had to reevaluate it around Bigfoot until I realized it wasn't just a forest giant or an escaped gorilla. It was really a whole nother type of human.
I still got people trying to call in. Sorry, guys.
Go ahead,
We're almost at the end of the show. I'm not going to take their call because we're only got like a few minutes left.
No, I'm happy. No, we got about 5 more minutes, right? Let's do it.
Well, there's one guy who's been trying to call him. Maybe I can call him back really quick because he keeps hanging up or it won't let me take him. Now I just hung up on him.
I am available to take emails. Just go to any of my websites. I just want to say, people, I have a contact form on every one of my websites, SimeonHein.com or New Crystal Mind.
Hello, you're on the air. Sorry.
How's it going, Jason?
Hey, one really quick, if you got a really quick question for our guest tonight, because we're almost at the end.
Yeah, I had an accident where I fell out of a tree and I should have died and I was saved. It was like a miracle situation. And then stuff started happening after that where I seen an owl that tried to attack me that was like over 6 foot tall.
Hello.
Bigfoot incident a year later. And I just didn't know if you like seen that where like NDD
Yes.
or NDE kicks in and like is a spiritual awakening or something, and you have these experiences. Okay.
It
And then I
fractured
had
your
another
timeline.
Fractured your
okay,
timeline.
It was like a destiny almost, or is it just
No,
something that
it's a gift. You're
accidentally?
seeing multidimensional reality the way it really is. I've talked to other people of the exact same thing. They said I should have been killed in that car accident, and I saw both possibilities simultaneously. I ended up in the one where I wasn't killed, and I don't even know how I got the other side of the car. And then these things happen because it fractures your linear sense of reality that we've all been brought up to believe is true. It's a gift, and you should see it as it's a big universe and just
parallel universe.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, just
okay.
So many good remote viewers started out being ordinary people that had an accident, and all of a sudden they have psychic powers. It takes
I do get premonitions and stuff.
Yeah, because this is all real, but we're not normally sensitive to it when everything else is really working with our physical senses. Your brain says, I don't need anything else, right? It's only when you go through a crisis situation that it opens you up to new possibility. And just look at it in a positive way, and you'll see something positive from it. I know it's not the ordinary sense of reality, but there's a lot of others like you that have had this experience with NDEs, and people who have NDEs who experience other realities and then come back. Remember Eben Alexander, his book about having the heart attack and comes back or something?
Yeah, a lot of them.
The people that were with me actually got to see what I was seeing too also, so it wasn't just like it was meant, I guess, just for me to see.
Better.
They were there with you though, and you were probably you could be the catalyst.
Because of me, it brought it.
It's
That's
possible.
what they tell me. Like, dude, you're a magnet for weird stuff.
I'm
not
accused of the same.
Once it gets dark and we're out in the middle of nowhere, I'm out here.
We got to go. We got to go out. We're in the same state, man. We got to go out, and both of our weirdness will bring out some weird stuff. Hey, man, you have
just drawing something.
Yeah, you have a merry.
Good question.
Go ahead. Yeah, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, bud. Thanks for calling in.
I love it.
Bye. Thank you.
This is more evidence right there, Jason.
Yeah. See, I've been fascinated with parallel universes ever since the first concept. I don't know where it came to me, but one of my brutal, crazy stuff that always has happened to me out through my life is having dreams of the future, stupid stuff in my life, and having it come exactly true. So it makes me question, what is time? Is there predestination? You know, and I've changed things.
Yeah, Larry Dossey wrote a whole book about precognition, precognitive dreams. Dale Graff, who ran the remote viewing program, has written about this. No, this is real. Just because it's not the mainstream belief doesn't mean it isn't true. Again, there was an Earth-centric idea. It didn't turn out to be true.
Yeah, that's what I hate the saying that's been around lately is the science is settled. I'm like, science is never settled.
No, it's never settled. Science. Bullshit.
I hate that term.
There's no settled science.
I know, but haven't you heard that the last 4 or 5 years now?
Garbage. That's what's wrong with this. It doesn't get settled. Every idea gets overturned in the long run. I forget who said this, but there's no single idea that won't get overturned eventually. We don't even understand gravity. It's something will simplify it at some point. It's just whatever is the closest approximation at the time that explains the data, but none of it explains all of it. It's always changing, and we should just celebrate that. I mean, look, folks, we're all alive. It's an amazing experience to be here, be with each other, to have these conversations, don't you think?
Yeah, it is a true miracle we're here to be able to do what we're doing tonight.
I totally agree. It's a miracle. This is just amazing, and don't let anyone tell you differently. It's never settled, and you're the one who decides what it is. These agencies were around, these institutions like to come off as if they're experts. They know what they're doing. But COVID showed us, and I'm not taking one position on that or another, it just showed us nobody knows what's going on.
Exactly.
I read this in Science. They said we're way too optimistic about the diagnosis and the other aspects of it. I'm not going to get into the debate about it, but it's not settled. It's
right.
It won't be settled for 10 years at least until we have all the data about what helped, what didn't help. Nobody knows it. They like to put themselves off that way so that we keep playing the game and the gravy train keeps flowing. But it's our job to upset the gravy train, folks. That's what, at least in the U.S., what we're very good at. If we hadn't upset the gravy train, we'd still be a British colony.
Exactly.
Okay, so stop.
We got to go.
Yeah, guys, if you want to get in contact with me, you just go to my blog, newcrystalmind.com. I have links to all of my books there. I'm happy to send you signed copies, although it may take a few weeks. They have to get printed, but there's a link to get signed. And there's a contact form, because some of you asking, you can contact me, and I'm happy to engage with you. I'm also on Twitter and YouTube. You can write.
I'd like to get a signed copy. I would like to get a signed copy, so I need to look into that.
Yes, and thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
I appreciate your interest in this. Thanks so much for reading it and reading it carefully and asking me these excellent questions about these things you have. I do appreciate it. I never.
It was a really honor to have you on the show to talk about this. I like I said, this is the Paranormal Soup kind of a show because we get into all these different topics I love to talk about and how they're connected. This is why I named the show what it is, and you were a perfect guest for that tonight. And we definitely got to get you on back again.
Great.
Definitely got to get you. So much more to get to talk
holidays,
about.
Everyone.
All
yeah,
right.
we'll talk again.
All right, guys, that's it for the show. No show next week because it's Christmas. Yay!
And I don't. You around the universe.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if we'll be back. Yeah, next show after that would be New Year's Day. We might have a show New Year's Day. I don't know. We'll see. Otherwise, we'll be back the following. So it might be a 2-week break. Hopefully not. We'll be back hopefully in a week. We'll see. But otherwise, if I don't see you, everybody have a Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and all that good stuff. Enjoy the holidays with your family and friends. And thank you to everybody who shares out the show. Thank you to all my Patreons out there. You help pay the bills. Go look us up, Jason Bland, Paranormal Soup on Patreon. $2 a month, $5 a month helps pay the bills. Or Super Chat on YouTube does too. Thank you all. Everybody have a great night. Thank you again.
Thanks, folks. Take care.
You have a great holiday. All right, guys. Good night.